The ideas that gave birth to our nation are the ideas that our nation is resistant to right now, and we should talk about that all the time.
In a world where narratives are shaped by corporations and gatekeepers, independent voices matter more than ever. Badlands Media brings together citizen journalists, researchers, and independent thinkers.
The truth is triggering.
Question the narrative. Explore the facts.
It's authenticity, courage, resilience.
Search for the truth others won't.
It's not about being first or being right.
The information war is changing.
It's about being authentic.
Embrace the friction.
Embrace the friction.
Shut the f*** up.
Authentically antagonizing. Join the movement.
I'm going to say how I feel.
Follow Badlands Media.
This is about the future.
The Badlands. What are the Badlands? Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Good afternoon, everybody.
There we go. Good afternoon. Welcome to the show. This is Geopolitics with Ghost. I'm your host, Gordon McCormick, the ghost of bass Patrick Henry. Some branding updates. Shout out to Jessica for the new background and thumbnail, and shout out to Green Star's brother for providing some music as we try to figure out licensing stuff with with using copyrighted music, because that'll not only will that get us kicked off YouTube, but it'll also, if Badlands were actually producing enough money to warrant a lawsuit, they could potentially sue us for using the money. For using the song. So anyway, that doesn't really matter. Point is, we appreciate the support, appreciate Green Star's brother for coming up with some songs. We'll rotate them in. How is everybody? Let's get the comments up on stage. There we go. And Jetpack Jones asked if Green Star's brother played the music. He didn't perform it. It was AI, but he asked me for some input, and I gave him some prompts, and he came up with a number of options. So we'll see. We'll rotate it and see how it goes. All right. Well, today is July 7th, 2026, and we are talking about a number of things. We had a lot of things to talk about today, but we have the first day of the NATO summit that is happening in Ankara, Turkey, that President Trump has attended or flown over there. I believe this is his first international flight. I don't think I'm making that up. This is his first international flight on the new Air Force One. His first actual flight was to the Badlands, which was awesome. I believe that was Friday, for the Mount Rushmore celebration. So, oh, what is that? Oh, hold on. Scavino. Oh, sorry for that. That was Scavino's video started playing in the background. Scavino putting the soundtrack from their movie Air Force One on his like X post about Trump, and that led me to closing out a tab that I didn't want to close out. There we go. All right, so let's just start with Trump and Turkey. I think that's probably the best best place to start. And I'm gonna play a lot of his meeting with Erdogan. It's only like a 30-minute video, but we'll kind of jump through it and kind of hit the big parts. Because as Trump said, the only reason we played it on Badlands Daily this morning, the only reason he went was because of his respect for Erdogan. He says he's like, otherwise he wouldn't have come. He didn't really have any interest in going. He thinks NATO is a joke. He doesn't respect NATO, but he does respect Erdogan, and he didn't want to just disrespect Erdogan when he's hosting the NATO summit and not go. So I think this morning on Badlands Daily, we played the video of him getting off of Air Force One. That was from Scavino. So here's now him arriving at the facility for dinner with Erdogan. So this would have been probably a few hours ago, I assume. Let me see. Boom. Arriving in the Beast. So I guess they must have loaded the Beast up in Air Force One. So Erdogan rolling out the blue carpet. I guess they use a blue carpet in Turkey, not a red carpet. He had one at Air Force One, had one at this dinner. And again, I pointed this out on Badlands, so let me turn this down a little bit. Trump dressed for a funeral. Someone might correct me, but I think that's a black suit. I don't know if that's a blue suit. It doesn't look blue to me. And it looks like he's wearing a black tie, or a dark tie. He's wearing a dark suit. He's wearing a dark tie. I mean, he's dressed like for a funeral almost. And I think it's NATO's funeral. I think we're burying NATO. So here's Erdogan and I assume his wife welcoming Trump, accepting Trump. And so now we can go to this bilateral meeting. Let's jump back to the beginning.
olduğunu özellikle ifade etmek istiyorum.
And I would like to express how important this summit is that we are here gathering for.
Man, terrible audio.
With the presence of President Trump,
All right, let's get through all the platitudes.
They have a lot of great.
All right, so this is what we want to hear Trump speaking.
The president has done, as everybody knows, it's been
summit.
Kendilerine tekrar hoş geldiniz diyorum.
Once again, I would like to say welcome, Mr. President.
Well, I want to thank you very much. As everybody knows, it's been very much reported. We are great friends. The president has done an incredible job. Just landing at the airport, to see such a beautiful airport, and to have a building named after me. I was very happy about that. That was very nice. The airport is absolutely beautiful. The roads coming in were brand new and beautiful. And he's been a great leader and a respected leader all over the world. And we really do. We've had right from the beginning good chemistry. We've had a very special relationship. Turkey has become, under the president, a very powerful country militarily. People don't know how powerful, actually. And they have a lot of our equipment. And they have a lot of great soldiers. And they really somebody to be reckoned with. And the nice part is that because of the relationship that we have, it's all gone very well. I just want to say that I have a lot of respect for the president, and I think it's really to the benefit of both countries. We're going to be talking today about trade. We're going to be talking about other things having to do with the military, lots of different things. Probably we'll mention Iran, where we have essentially decimated their military. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. And we have some very good discussions. But we do a lot of trade with Turkey. We make great things and they make great things. And we've had it's had a very big impact on both of our countries. So I just want to tell you that it's an honor to be with you. And we're going to have a lot of good meetings. We're going to have good dinners, good food. We're going to have a good time, but mostly we're going to have a lot of work. And we're going to do good things for our countries. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Sayın Cumhurbaşkanım, tamamına kadar geldiniz. Çok teşekkür ederim. Sen çok uzun süren dostluğumuz var.
Something certainly with a better relationship with Turkey, and Turkey's been in many ways.
Sell F-35s to Turkey, and what about
All right, so here's the big headline right now that everyone's talking about is about these F-35s, something that we covered pretty in depth last summer and fall when Erdogan, back in I think it was September or October, came to the White House. So this is the big question being asked to Trump now, but are you going to sell F-35s to Erdogan or to Turkey?
legal restrictions?
It's a decision we're going to make. We have a very good relationship. I would think that many people, I can tell you, many people, including the people sitting right here, thinks, why wouldn't we do that? We have a better relationship with Turkey, and Turkey's been in many ways much more loyal than other countries that we think would be loyal. So, yeah, something certainly we would consider. It's a great plane. It's the best, currently the best plane by far. And it's certainly something we will consider, yeah.
Mr. President, sir.
Yes, Dan?
Mr. President, sir, you said, I believe it was last week or 2 weeks ago, that President Erdogan was a big reason you wanted to come to the summit here. What has made your relationship with him so special, in your own words, and what do you broadly hope to achieve here at the summit?
You never know why a relationship is special. Some people you get along with, and some people you don't. Sometimes you get along with the toughest people, like him, and sometimes you don't get along with the weakest, most pathetic people. You just don't get along, maybe you don't respect them, but from the day we met, we got along. We had a pastor, as I remember, his name was Pastor Brunson, and it was a very big thing, and it was very traumatic. He was sentenced to a long-term prison sentence, and I felt he was innocent, and I called. Other people called, they got nowhere. I called the president, and he released him immediately. It was something that the evangelical community will never forget. Because he was a good man, Pastor Brunson. So, just things like that, we just it's always worked out. And I think it's been from the very beginning, from the first moment. I said it before, it's a chemistry that works between us. There were those that I don't have a good chemistry with, I will tell you that. And we worked that out too.
Mr. President,
Yeah, so the Brunson thing was something that I think we covered as part of the F-35 discussion, because this was all unfolding in the same moment. This Pastor Brunson, I remember looking into him. I don't remember the specifics, but he was sentenced to a lengthy prison sentence, American citizen in Turkey. The media was running with that as to why Trump should not be nice to Turkey, should not be friends with Erdogan, should basically tell Erdogan to go pound sand, and should become extremely hostile and unfriendly to Erdogan. And then Trump called up Erdogan and was like, "Can you release this guy?" And Erdogan said, "Yeah, sure, let's do it." And then they did the F-35 deal. And again, we sold them the F-35s. I keep saying this. They paid for the F-35s. Congress put out documentation that stated that they had already paid for them, that they had paid for the F-35s in full. They also ordered, it was like 49 or 75, something like that, kits to upgrade their F-16s. And they later canceled that order because they said they figured out a way to upgrade them without this kit that, I guess Boeing, is it Boeing that makes F-16s? I think it's Boeing. that they were selling. So they canceled the F-16 upgrade kits. They kept the F-35s. They paid for the F-35s, and then Congress refused to deliver the F-35s, citing Russia as the reason, like their alliance with Russia.
Are further troop drawdowns in Europe likely? Are you likely to announce further troop drawdowns in Europe?
Say it.
Are further troop drawdowns in Europe likely? And are you satisfied with the progress that NATO allies have made?
Well, you see,
And I guess I might as well switch to this real quick. Here's Lindsey Graham of all people, talking about the F-35s deal.
I'm open to it. There may be some pushback in Congress, to be honest with you. Turkey's relationship with Israel, probably not very helpful in Congress. But having said that, it's a great ally, only Muslim nation in NATO. I think that's very important. Got a great military. I like it. You know, the F-16s that you fly were made in South Carolina. So I'm very familiar with your pilots and your air crews. You have very good military. And I would be open to that. I think it's crucial in the sense that geography. You're in a very strategic part of the world, but you're a Muslim nation, and that matters to me. I mean, there are a billion Muslims on the planet. Having a member of NATO with a majority, vast, strong Muslim population is good for NATO. It makes us stronger.
Yeah, so I don't read too much into like these kind of moments from people like Lindsey Graham because it's hard to know what his motivation is there. I mean, you could certainly make the argument that he could just be playing politics right here. He could just be, picking his battles, and he knows that President Trump likes Erdogan and President Trump is pro-Turkey. And so, why, even though Netanyahu and the Israeli diaspora are going hard against Turkey right now, why, like, pick your battles if you're trying to get Trump's attention. It could be that he's flipped. It could be that I have noticed a pattern from Lindsey Graham lately where he, in moments where you would expect him to be against, like he was ostensibly pretty supportive of Trump's deal with Iran. He wasn't one of the people. He was sitting there for months being like, you better not make a deal. You better not make a deal. You better not make a deal. And then all of a sudden when the deal got made, he was actually one of the people who was open to it, surprisingly. So again, like it could be a coercion thing. He could be getting coerced into doing this. It could be like a Sun Tzu, like maybe he was just offered a better deal, offered a better life if he flipped. He could also just be playing a long con. This could be a long con. The other thing to remember is he's in Turkey right now. So, if you are of the mindset that Turkey is this ruthless dictatorship, which Lindsey Graham and others like him have said, besmirching Turkey while you're standing in Turkey would be a little counterintuitive. When he mentions the geographic significance, I mean, look where Turkey is. You have to go through Istanbul. If you're Russia or Ukraine, you have to go through Istanbul to reach the Mediterranean and really the Atlantic Ocean. Specifically for Ukraine, Russia can come up through St. Petersburg and go through the Baltic Sea to get there. But that's what he means when he says the strategic value. Again, like Lindsey Graham has a long history of smack talking Erdogan in Turkey, so I take this with a grain of salt. But it is interesting that he is, while everyone else is zigging, he's zagging in terms of the Zionists. That's not lost on me, but we'll see. Well, let's get back and play a little more.
I was very disappointed with NATO.
Now Trump's going to talk about his disappointment with NATO. This is something that went viral where he's just slamming NATO.
Frankly, if it weren't held in Turkey, where my friend happens to be a very strong leader, a very strong person, it's possible that I would have attended. I felt I had to attend because of the fact that, I know he's gone all out. It's a big thing to have NATO come to Turkey or any place else. It's a big thing. But we weren't treated well because we did something in Iran. We don't need anybody's help. I didn't even want their help. But before I asked, they said they wouldn't be there. And we've invested trillions of dollars in NATO. Why? To protect European countries and others, Canada, etc., but to protect people, countries from, generally speaking, it used to be the Soviet Union, now it's Russia. And I say that's fine, but you would think that they'd be very willing to do something to help us. And they really weren't. In the case of the United Kingdom, the Prime Minister, I guess he's no longer there, maybe because of this. It was a very unpopular thing he did. He said, no, we'll help after the war is over. I said, I don't need that kind of help. We didn't need any help at all. And in a way, I was testing people. I was testing to see whether or not they'd be there, because I've long said that.
I was testing people. I think there's truth to that. I think he probably was testing some of these countries to see what some of these leaders were going to do. Because again, geopolitics is not cultures getting along. It's people getting along. It's leaders getting along. If the leaders don't get along, we have a war. If the leaders get along, like Trump and Erdogan here, we have peace and we have partnership. So I do think that to some extent, Trump was testing the leaders to see, like, all right, who here is actually going to play ball with me, and who here is just going to be a stone wall, like who here is just going to stonewall me and stop me from getting anything done as it relates to Iran or NATO or any of it. And then he can kind of organize his priorities and his list of allies accordingly. And that's probably an evolving list that's always changing, along with like intelligence and background and research and stuff on who these individuals are and their motivations. So let's continue. I think this is the part that he talks about Meloni, if I'm not mistaken.
We help them, but I'm not sure that they'd be there for us. And Italy turned us down.
Yeah, here it is.
And Germany turned us down. And France turned us down. And it's okay. But, you know, why are we spending hundreds of billions of dollars and they're not there for us? We've always been there for them.
Türkiye ile Suriye arasında Türkiye'de... Sayın Cumhurbaşkanım, bir saniye. Haber Karaca, efendim, İran'daki savaşın sona erdirilmesi için oldukça çaba sarf ettiniz. Müzakere süreci devam ediyor ancak nihai bir anlaşma noktasına gelinmiş değil. Bundan sonraki süreçte Türkiye nasıl adım atacak İran ve ABD arasındaki müzakere sürecinin olumlu bir şekilde neticelenmesi için?
Bu süreçte yine aynı şekilde bizler İran-Amerika ilişkilerini nasıl bir düzleme kavuştururuz? Onun gayreti içerisindeyiz. Elimizden geleni yapmak suretiyle dünya barışına bir adım atalım diye gerek şahsım, gerek arkadaşlarım hep birlikte...
I'm going to try to skip through him since they don't have English overdubs.
Bu bölgedeki barışı sağlama için
I think they have a translator, but this White House needs a new sound guy. The sound on this is terrible.
Türkiye-ABD ilişkilerinin geliştiği bir
ve bu yapacağımız görüşme...
What is the theory?
Russian missile defense system going to be handed over to a third party as part of any deal with F-35s?
What does that mean?
Okay, so the question is, are you going to hand over to a third party in regards to any deal with F-35s? And Trump asks, what does that mean? Like, what do you mean by that?
Going to be handed over to a third party.
He says, are you going to be handed over to a third party?
Is that not part of the deal?
Third party? What is the theory with respect to what?
There's our concerns about the Russian missile defense system. Do you have those concerns about this system? Are they going to have to...
I have no concerns at all about anything. I mean, he's...
Okay, so I don't know if that was Caitlin. What's her name? Is it a CNN chick who looks like Ben Shapiro? But they were asking about the whole reason in 2019 that Congress refused to transfer the F-35s to Turkey was because Russia had given air defense systems to Turkey that I think the specific concern was that between Turkey having the Russian air defense systems and the F-35s both in their possession, the overlapping technologies would allow for an understanding of how to defeat, to modify or update or innovate the air defense systems in order to take down the F-35s and beat their stealth capabilities. Because again, the F-35 uses the F-22's stealth technology, and we haven't given the F-22 to anybody, including Israel. So that was the specific concern, is that if Turkey had both of those technologies, they would be able to develop systems for beating the F-35, and that technology would be, and those solutions would be handed over to the Russians. I believe that was the specific concern, as I understood it. So she's now asking that, and she's saying, "Are you going to give over a third party? What do you mean a third party? Like we need a babysitter? Like, no. This is what the people want, though. They want government. They want world government that is going to come in here and make sure that two leaders don't become best friends and make trade deals that are advantageous to the people.
A leader of a country that he's made a much better country, much more powerful country, and you see it. I mean, it's beautiful. You get off the roads and you're like, it's an amazing thing. Now, I have no concerns about anything having to do with Turkey. The relationship, I would say the relationship with Turkey right now is better probably than it's ever been. It was good in my first 4 years, but I think now it's probably even better than that, if that's possible.
Mr. President, so U.S. military and Turkish military constitute a really strong and large.
And I'm getting word from my my advisors in the chat that wasn't Caitlin Collins. That was somebody else. So I'll defer to their expertise on that.
Large military base for NATO. Are they?
And so the question is Turkish military base a strong and large military base for NATO? Are we considering that?
Expecting further defense cooperation out of this bilateral meeting, out of this NATO summit here in Ankara?
Well, we're going to find out when I go there. We're going to find out. We're going to be having meetings. I'm very friendly with many of the leaders. Some of them are new. We don't know them. But, I've been doing this for now sort of a long time. If you count the 4 years when we had a rigged election, it was very much into politics then too. But I spent the first 4 years. I spent 4 years in a little different state, and then we've had an amazing, probably the best year maybe ever had by an American president. When you look at the economy, we have the greatest economy we've ever had. We have $19 trillion, $19.2 trillion to be exact, being invested in the United States. That's 7 or 8 times more than it's ever. It's a world record, not just a U.S. record. And I just read where, in fact, coming over, I was in the car with those beautiful horses, those great riders, those great soldiers, and it came over the wires that Toyota is moving out of Mexico into the United States and building one of the biggest truck and car plants ever built. It's amazing. That's what tariffs do, properly used. And so we've never had a more exceptional economy or potential economy. There's never been anything like it. Under the last administration, they did much less than $1 trillion of investment coming in. And we're at 19.2 trillion in actually the first 12 months, because that's where it's, really, so we're a year and a half, so that number is now substantially higher. But 19.2 trillion, Scott, for a period of 12 months. Nobody's ever seen anything like that. So we have by far the greatest economy. We have more jobs right now in the United States than ever before. And we have a great relationship with some.
By the way, we did kind of gloss over this, but I'll just show you like the imagery when Trump was talking about the cavalry, the Turkish cavalry. Here's like the welcome. Here's a better view of like the welcome that that Trump is getting. And you got to look at what it says on screen. This is from Fox News. Voice of Mike Pompeo. So Mike Pompeo is sitting here. Let's see what Mike Pompeo says.
Or even longer term in Europe itself.
So if we're looking to get something done, the president likes deals. Like it or not, the president is less enthusiastic about Ukraine than he is more enthusiastic about finishing off Iran. So if the European leaders know that and our allies know that, could there be some horse trading going on? Like, we give the Ukrainians the ability to make their own patriots, give them the.
Is that Stelter? Is Stelter one using the term horse trading? Are you saying that because these people are Middle Easterners? Is that why we're using the term horse trading, Brian?
Licenses in exchange for some type of escort when it comes to the strait?
Brian, that'd be a great outcome. I don't even see that as a trade. I think I think you'd agree with me. That's a win-win for everybody. That's a win for the United States and Europe. That's a win for the United States and the Middle East as well.
Mr. Secretary, you mentioned
and what they were talking about is
not the president is less enthusiastic about.
He's talking about an escort in the Hormuz.
Our allies know that. Could there be some horse trading going on? Like, we give the Ukrainians the.
I'm being told that the Pompeo clip is super low. Here, I'll play it again. It's only a 1 minute clip. Appreciate the text.
The right thing for the United States in these meetings, and pull no punches with the things the United States need, whether that's in the Strait of Hormuz or even longer term in Europe itself.
So if we're looking to get something done, the president likes deals. Like it or not, the president is less enthusiastic about Ukraine than he is more enthusiastic about finishing off Iran. So if the European leaders know that and our allies know that, could there be some horse trading going on? Like, we give the Ukrainians the ability to make their own patriots, give them the licenses in exchange for some type of escort when it comes to the Strait?
Brian, that'd be a great outcome. I don't even see that as a trade. I think that's I think you'd agree with me. That's a win-win for everybody. That's a win for the United States and Europe. That's a win for the United States and the Middle East as well.
Mr. Secretary, you may not have a screen in front of you, but the president's getting ready to arrive right here. Step out of.
Okay, so Fox News and Pompeo are telegraphing right there what I think the plan is for the deep state is to try to get this deal that's still under negotiation. This is, remember the MOU set up a 60-day window to roll out to negotiate the permanent deal for the Strait of Hormuz and everything else that comes out of the Iran conflicts, so to speak. And they're saying that they want I would assume it's a military escort, like a U.S. military escort for every ship that goes through the Strait. Who pays for that exactly, Brian? Is that on the U.S. taxpayer dime? Is that so that means we're going to have to station like a huge Navy base? We're going to have a huge Navy base or some sort of installation in the area and keep a bunch of soldiers there so that we can police that thing? Why is that our problem? The Strait of Hormuz is not our problem. We don't need the Strait of Hormuz, as Trump has said. We have Venezuela, the oil coming out of there. We have the largest oil reserve in the world in Canada, Alberta, and off the coast of the U.S. and down in the Gulf. We don't need the Strait of Hormuz. Let the rest of the world figure that out. Okay. All we have to do is disentangle ourselves from that, walk away, and just trust that our partners in the area are going to look out for their own best interests. And that's that. But these people don't want us to walk away. They want us there forever. And that's what they're doing here. All right, let's go back and finish Trump and Erdogan.
Countries on trade, and Turkey happens to be one of them.
So the answer is no, lady. We're not going to bring in a third party because Donald Trump doesn't need a babysitter when it comes to making deals. Just ridiculous questions.
Sayın Cumhurbaşkanı, siz her fırsatta dünya 5'ten büyüktür, daha adil bir dünya
No chance Trump doesn't understand.
Bugün konumuz Sayın Trump, ABD Başkanı. Onun da zaman zaman küresel sistemin mevcut durumuna ilişkin eleştirilerini biliyoruz. NATO'nun iki en büyük askeri gücü olan
Bizden
Erdogan.
Is that for me? Are you asking me, or are you asking the president?
No, President Erdogan, thank you.
The president.
biz Rusya-Ukrayna zirvesinde
Rehab and other things, but they bought planes from the United States. And when
liderler zirvesinde kendisine teşekkür edeceğiz.
I might add that Turkey bought planes. It's the best plane, but they bought planes from the United States. And when you buy a plane from the United States, if there's engine rehab and other things that are done to engines, there's various things that happen, including just maintenance. I think we have an obligation to maintain engines and help them maintain engines. When you buy a plane from us, what are we going to say? You're buying a plane if the engine needs work or if the engine has to be rehabilitated or even upgraded somewhat. But I think we have an obligation to do it. What are you going to do? Say, I'm not going to do that? Look, Turkey's been, I know, a lot of people don't agree, although I think with time they're starting to agree. Turkey has been a great ally for us. Turkey could have gone on the side. They know Iran very well, and they know the problems with Iran. But they've been very instrumental, along with a couple of other countries, of helping. They could have gotten into the fight. And I hear some people saying about their relationship with Israel. They could have gotten into the fight. They're a very powerful military nation. They didn't do that. Maybe they didn't do that because of me, but they could have gotten into the fight on the other side. They are a nation that's been very, very good, and I can speak for myself.
I think Trump's communicating right now with the Zionists, by the way. He's communicating with Netanyahu. He's communicating with the diaspora. He's basically saying, like, I could have unleashed Turkey on Israel if I wanted to. That's what he's saying here.
Myself as president, they've been extraordinary in many ways with respect to our relationship, including trying to end the war with Iran, or whatever you call it. It's not even a war, it's a military operation. It's a denuclearization. That's really what it is of Iran, because I don't think he wants to see them have a nuclear weapon either. I'm pretty sure of that. In fact, I'm totally sure of that. So, but when they buy a product from us, whether it's a plane or anything else, when it's time for maintenance, I think don't we have an obligation to help them? What do we do? Say we're not gonna let you use the product that you spent a lot of money in buying? And especially when it's been somebody that frankly has been more helpful to the United States than many other more traditional countries.
Mr. President, you will meet President Zelensky tomorrow, sir. You will meet President Zelensky tomorrow. Should we expect a breakthrough soon? Where are we at Ukraine talks?
I had a very good talk with President Putin, who, by the way, has a lot of respect for President Erdogan, a lot of respect for him. We had a long talk yesterday, it lasted a long time, and I also spoke with President Zelensky right after that. I think they both want to make a deal. It's too bad it took so long, but I think there's going to be, something's going to come out, and the president's also helping us with that, but I think there's something, I settled 8 wars, and I think we're going to be settling, and it doesn't seem likely now, but sometimes with war, I see when it's least likely, that's when it happens. I had a very good talk with President Putin. I had a very good talk with, I would say as a combination, a lot of times I do well with Putin and Zelensky would be a problem, or vice versa. Zelensky would be great and Putin would be. They both want to get it settled now. More than that, that's all I do in my life is deals. I know deals. And I think we're going to get it settled, hopefully soon. Last month, 35,000, mostly soldiers, died. The month before that, it was 24,000. The month before that, it was 27,000. And the month before that, it was 29,000. But last month, it was 35,000 young soldiers, mostly soldiers, died. And that's crazy.
Sayın Cumhurbaşkanım, savunma sanayi işbirliklerinden bahsediyor.
So I think we're probably got like one more question before we hit that. Let's just look at some of the things that we're seeing here unfold. I have the RT live blog, and the headline there is NATO summit opens with Trump threats. Says NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, who infamously referred to Trump as daddy during last year's meeting at The Hague, is using the Ankara summit as an opportunity to prove his value to Trump. Quote, President Trump fully expects that all allies will step up immediately and get on the path to 5%, talking about 5% GDP towards NATO, and do it with urgency, he said on Monday, telling reporters that he plans to flatter the U.S. president by bringing up the Trump trillion, his term for the $1 trillion that Canada and NATO's European members have spent cumulatively on defense since Trump's first term in office began in 2017. Well, good, because that's your defense. It's not our defense. That's your defense. We're not, that $1 trillion isn't to protect the United States. It's to protect you. So get used to it. Here's Ursula von der Leyen, the president of EU, with her embracing Zelensky and talking about how awesome their relationship is going to be. They provided a $4 billion drone package to further strengthen Ukraine's capabilities. And so I think this is, so here's Zelensky speaking.
And I believe Europe urgently needs its own capability to produce anti-ballistic systems and the missiles they require. We all value the Patriot system. It's an excellent system, and there are others as well, but today's wars have shown that current Patriot production is not enough to meet the growing demand for protection against ballistic missiles. That is a fact. And we must respond to that fact. Those who defend life need more Patriots. We have also discussed Patriot production licenses with our American partners, and I ask you to support our efforts to make this happen.
Okay, so he's talking about like onshoring defense production into Ukraine. I mean, I'm sure they already produced some stuff. They produced those drones and a few other weapon systems. Who's paying for that exactly? Is that the U.S. taxpayer once again? Like, we're going to pay to build you a plant so you can keep churning out Patriot missiles. So, you know, these are the missiles that defend you from Russia. After you go and you blow up try to blow up a Russian power plant, they respond, and then you need somebody to look out for you. There's a pattern here, though, because notice that both Zelensky and Netanyahu are talking about onshoring, you know, becoming self-reliant when it comes to the defense production. It's because they want this brought indoors, inside the tent, so that they can control it, and that they can't be cut off by this administration or future administrations. Okay, so let's go back and do the last little portion with Erdogan.
Working very closely with sanctions off.
Okay, so this is a really important question. This is about lifting all the sanctions on Turkey, because the U.S. does currently still have some sanctions on Turkey.
I can tell you, we're going to be taking the sanctions off. Okay? I don't want him to waste his time answering that question, because we're working very closely with Marco Rubio, very famous man, great Secretary of State, and with Scott Bessent, and with Pete and everybody else. We're going to be taking the sanctions off. It's time to do that. Okay?
Mr. President, you said that
We don't want to sanction friends. It's very simple. There's plenty of people we can sanction, and we are sanctioned. We don't want to sanction friends. And because of the president, you know, we have a very good relationship with the new leader of Syria, and he's done an amazing job. In a year and a half, he's pulled the whole country together. And I have a very great relationship with him. And somebody said, well, he's pretty rough to put him there. I approved him along with the president. We were the two that really wanted him. And he's done a great job. He's done a great job. He's pulled it together. Not an easy job.
Mr. President,
Can you clarify what you meant with your social media post yesterday with respect to Prime Minister Meloni? That true social.
Here we go. Here's the Meloni commentary.
He's a nice person, actually. We've had a good week. We had a
I want to pause on that. We'll come back to Meloni because I want to do the Middle East before we go to Italy. Okay, so let's go to Turkish media. We'll finish up Turkey, and then we'll pivot to the rest of the Middle East. So here is Trump vowing to lift the CAA TSA sanctions on Turkey. U.S. President Donald Trump vowed on Tuesday to remove the sanctions known as CAATSA imposed on Turkey several years ago, signaling a major shift in bilateral ties during a high-level meeting with Turkish President Erdogan. And then there's the quote that we just heard. While Trump signaled a definitive move under U.S. law, a president cannot permanently terminate CAATSA sanctions entirely without specific congressional procedures. The U.S. imposed Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act. That's what CAATSA stands for. On Turkey in 2020. On the F-35 fighter jet program, Trump said he would certainly consider restoring sales to Ankara, characterizing Turkey as being much more loyal than other countries. He then goes on to talk about the F-35. He also dismissed concerns that Turkey's purchase of Russian S-400 missile defense systems long cited as a hurdle to Turkey buying F-35s, asserting that the Turkish-U.S. relationship is better than probably it's ever been. Trump told Erdogan that the Turkish president has been a great leader and respected all over the world. They have great chemistry. Trump also claimed that both Russian President Vladimir Putin and Zelensky want to make a deal to end their country's war, which began in 2022. Trump lamented the high casualty rate. Furthermore, Trump praised the amazing job done by Syria's new leader, Ahmed al-Shara, in stabilizing his country over the last 18 months. Quote, he's pulled the whole country together, said the U.S. president, who is expected to meet with Shara on Wednesday. That's tomorrow. Friction within NATO. Yeah, we already looked at that. He talked about the friction inside of NATO. And then we have Okay, so we have the reset That's what everyone's calling it. A defense reset is how it's being characterized. Let me see. Where are the details on that? Right. So Turkey says Ankara NATO summit opens a new chapter for alliance's defense industry. So they're basically pumping the tires on Turkey now developing more weapons for NATO and Europe. I think that is important because assuming that ends up happening, that puts Turkey in a much stronger position over Europe, right? And that's the pattern you're going to see with Meloni when we get to Meloni. We covered it a little bit on Badlands Daily today. And yeah, so I guess the defense reset that they were referring to is really more of the lifting of the sanctions, giving selling the F-35 and moving productions of defense technologies to Turkey. And these would be technologies and military equipment that would be developed for Europe, for NATO specifically. But that's obviously going to put Turkey in a much stronger position in terms of having control over NATO to whatever extent NATO actually continues to exist. I'm not convinced that NATO will continue to exist. And so, from there, let's look at, since we're already discussing it, let's look at or discussing something similar. Germany condemns the bombing of attacks in Syrian capital Damascus during Macron's visit. So Macron was in Damascus visiting with Shura, and there are some pretty funny images floating around of this meeting because here it is right here. Erdogan showing solidarity with Macron by holding his hand after the attack in Damascus near his hotel yesterday. I guess this must have happened yesterday. And this was like 2 blocks from the hotel that Erdogan was staying in Damascus, and there was like a huge explosion. And so now he's in Ankara, and I guess solidarity with Erdogan. So here's the explosion that we're referring to. A little bit, it's a little obnoxious. So 2 bombs exploded in Damascus near his hotel. There's just some aftermath. Now, it says the first blast, this is from Lord Bibo, the first blast hit straight after Macron's motorcade left for the presidential palace, and the second one went off next to an ambulance parked at the scene. The attack is currently under investigation, and there's been no immediate claim of responsibility. Was this a message? Was this a message to Macron? That would be my immediate takeaway, is that this was a message to Macron, because Macron is over there. I think Macron is acting as Trump's, like, in a way, Trump's extension. It's like Macron has this weird, like, Jekyll and Hyde thing going on where sometimes he seems to be advancing the interests of the deep state. They certainly seem to think that they control him. And then sometimes he's totally like Trump's, puppet. So it is really interesting to watch that kind of back and forth. This is let me see if I can just pull up the Macron and Shura images because these are hilarious. He wore these these aviators the entire time. Look, here he is right here. This is from like last night. So he's just, not only was he wearing dark sunglasses the entire day, like when he's like walking around with Shura, with Jelani, as he formerly was known. By the way, look at the background. That's like the Epstein temple background. And remember, the Epstein temple is like the design of it, the blue and white stripes is based on a Syrian temple, a temple in Syria. So this is actually a Syrian design, but you can see it right there in the background, the Epstein temple. I'm going to turn the sound off because we can't understand what they're saying anyway. So then nighttime comes and they're eating dinner and Macron is still wearing these damn sunglasses. And it's hilarious. It's like, it's very, it's almost like cartoonish. The entire internet's talking about it, like what, or the entire like X is making fun of him for it. Like, did he get punched in the face? Does he have a black eye? I don't see any evidence of that. But then you see that he is in Ankara today meeting with Erdogan, and he's still wearing the damn sunglasses. So is this like a humiliation ritual that he's going through? I have no idea, but maybe he got beat up. Maybe the deep state beat the crap out of him before we went to Damascus, and then they set off those bombs as just like a reminder, like remember who you work for. But very, very, very, very interesting here. Let's look at this. So this is French, but he says, let me see if I'll silence it and then I'll read what he says. He says, which will be implemented, the resumption of arms by these legitimate authorities. That's what we believe in. And so ultimately we believe that Ebola must be disarmed. Here it is, Lebanon. So we believe that Israel must leave Lebanese territory, and we believe that legitimate institutions must be strengthened, Lebanon's sovereignty restored, and we also believe that for Syria, it must be fully sovereign and united, and that all those who occupy its territory must leave, and who must find mechanisms and build mechanisms to assert their security interests. And so I think he is advancing Trump's agenda, the Patriot agenda, the Sovereign Alliance agenda, because he's openly saying Israel needs to leave Lebanon. And he's meeting with the guy, Syrian president, who Trump said a few weeks ago at the G7, I think maybe Jalani Shara, the Syrian president, he's the one who should be taking care of Hezbollah. He's the one who should be fighting Hezbollah, dealing with Lebanon. Let's get the IDF out of there. Let's get Israel out of there. Now Macron, who France is like traditionally the protectorate of Syria and Lebanon. That's why there's this relationship here. He's now saying the same thing. He's now saying, yeah, okay, Netanyahu, y'all need to get out of there. And then let's look at what Shara says. And so he says, I want to salute President Macron for his courage. As soon as news of the explosions reached him, he immediately declared that the visit would continue and that his program would go ahead as planned. Certainly, there are many people who are harmed by Syria's success today. There are those who wanted this country to remain in ruin and destruction, and they are troubled by what Syria is achieving. The investigations are currently underway, and I believe that very soon those responsible for this heinous criminal act will be arrested. This attack only increases the determination and resolve of the Syrian state and of everyone who supports it to continue moving forward and with rebuilding Syria. So it doesn't make any sense that Hezbollah would be the one doing the bombing. Both of these guys, Shara and Macron, are openly saying that Israel should leave Lebanon. So it doesn't make sense that they would be targets for Hezbollah. If anything, Hezbollah would appreciate and welcome their rhetoric, right? It makes way more sense that this would be either Israel, like the IDF, or like one of its proxies, which would be ISIS or Al Qaeda. And then that brings in additional questions like, well, wait a minute, I thought Shara was ISIS and Al Qaeda. Well, he was, but he clearly isn't anymore. And that again invites its own questions and issues. Okay, so as we pivot around the Middle East, let's just go to Israel. There's a lot of Israel headlines we'll kind of fly through. Netanyahu, U.S. selling F-35s to Turkey will only bring aggression in its wake. So this is him prior to Trump's meeting with Erdogan today. It's been speculated for the past couple of days that Trump was going to be doing this. Clearly, there was discussion of this at the White House, and those discussions have leaked. Let's see. We have the next headline is, this is hilarious. Netanyahu rejecting J.D. Vance's claim last week that Trump is Israel's, or whatever, 2 weeks ago, that Trump is Israel's only friend. And the thing that makes me laugh the hardest is that he cites, we have a lot of support online from India. It's like, oh, the call centers. We have the call centers on our side. The call centers in India, they have our back. The guys who are texting on 100 different iPhones at one time, they have Netanyahu's back. So the bot farms and the call centers are, let me see if I can find the exact quote in this article. Yeah, he says, pushing back, Netanyahu didn't deny that Trump was the greatest friend we ever had in the White House, but denied that he was the only one. India, he said, quote, has 1.4 billion people, and boy, do we have tremendous support there. He also cited the overwhelming support he said he receives on his Facebook page, apparently referring to engagement from Indian users as evidence. That is, I mean, you can't script this any better. I don't know. I mean, man, the Chris Paul theory of our boy Yuhu becomes more and more compelling to me as the days go on, because I can't imagine somebody getting up there and saying something like that unless you were just completely desperate and grasping at straws. But that could also be the game theory. But citing Indian social media influencers commenting on my Facebook page. I have lots of friends on Facebook, guys. Okay, I have a lot of friends on Facebook, and they all live in India. I can't even say it with a straight face. Okay, yeah, so here's another headline. Ahead of Trump's trip to Turkey, Netanyahu says Ankara shouldn't get the F-35s. This is rhetoric that you're seeing everywhere among Mossad media. Here's the headline about the bombing of Macron, or the bombing of Damascus while Macron was visiting, wounding 18 people. And again, there's Macron wearing, look, I love the guys in the background, like staring him down. I'm sure they're supposed to be doing that, but just the look on this guy's face, like, why the hell is this guy wearing his aviators? Like, okay, Maverick. All right. Then we have, here's Netanyahu. I have doubts about the success of Trump's Iran diplomacy, but he should be given a chance. He's been doing a lot of interviews lately. He did specifically one on Fox News, which we're going to get to on Sunday. So here's Netanyahu on CNN after hours after Trump hailed Erdogan. Turkey is not a friendly country to the U.S. So again, there is so much subversion happening here from Netanyahu, from Mark Levin, from Laura Loomer, from the whole gang. The whole gang is all coming out, and they're trying to undermine and subvert Trump, which is why it's interesting that people like Lindsey Graham are actually supporting what Trump's doing right now with Turkey. It says Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he spoke several times with Donald Trump ahead of U.S. President's visit to Ankara about the need to keep Turkey out of the F-35 program. Quote, everybody understands that notwithstanding the personal friendship that President Trump has with Erdogan, it doesn't make Turkey a friendly country to the United States, Netanyahu said during an interview with CNN. During his sit-down with Erdogan earlier today, Trump said he would lift sanctions on Turkey and consider resuming the sale of F-35 jets to Ankara, praised Erdogan as a friend, and said that we have a better relationship with Turkey, and Turkey is in many ways much more loyal than other countries. And I think the countries he's referring to is Israel. That's what I think. Netanyahu on CNN accuses Turkey of being infected with the Muslim Brotherhood, threatening EU states, occupying Cyprus, harboring Hamas, and throwing political opponents and journalists in jail. Quote, he's not exactly a model ally of the United States, says Netanyahu, adding that Erdogan threatens to destroy Israel. Turkey has aggressive aspirations, he says. This is not a force for peace and stability. Netanyahu continues arguing that giving the F-35s will bring aggression in its wake. Some of the other quotes that I saw him make in some of these other interviews were, it would upset the balance of power in the Middle East, meaning they only want Israel to have good, strong, like the best weapons. Israel only wants to fight people who are fighting in like flip-flops and tennis shoes with like AK-47s. They don't want to fight guys who actually have advanced weaponry, armor, airplanes, any of that stuff, because that's when the IDF already can't defeat, Hamas or Hezbollah. How are they going to defeat the largest military in Europe and the Middle East that has F-35s? They can't. All right. So then we have, I'm going to save Rahm Emanuel because that's interesting signal. Israel leaves ambassador to Turkey post vacant after envoy's retirement amid sharp tensions. Israel has not appointed a new ambassador to Turkey following the recent retirement of its previous envoy amid escalating tensions between Jerusalem and Ankara, leaving the post vacant despite maintaining full diplomatic ties between the countries remaining, Channel 12 reports. Arit Lillian, who was appointed Israel's ambassador to Ankara in 2022, returned to Israel following the outbreak of the war against Hamas after the October 7th, 2023 attack due to security concerns. Turkey subsequently recalled its own ambassador from Israel. Let's see. Lillian retired several weeks ago. The foreign ministry has given the impression that there is currently no rush to appoint a replacement. Okay. And so, yeah, there's that. Interesting lawsuit. We will go back to the lawsuit. Netanyahu to sit for 2 more foreign interviews with CNN and Newsmax. And this was just reported like a few hours ago. So I think this is different than the CNN interview that we just saw. It could be, I mean, hell, maybe it is the CNN interview we just saw, but Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will be interviewed on U.S. outlets CNN and Newsmax in the coming hour. Okay, so that was the interview we just saw. He appeared on Fox News in each of the past 2 days. And Laura Loomer was like, oh my God, greatest interview ever by Netanyahu. Israel's our greatest ally. We love Fox News. Yeah. Okay, and then we're going to save the Italy. We're going to save the Italy statement. Okay, and then we have the freedom of navigation comments. So this one was interesting. Trump says Netanyahu knows who the boss is. We'll meet him as soon as next week. He's putting the meeting off until after he goes to NATO, after he goes to Turkey, which again, this is a pattern. Trump does this all the time. Remember back in September when we had the UN General Assembly meet in New York? Remember what happened? Netanyahu basically announced on television or during an interview that he was coming to the White House to meet Trump. And the language and rhetoric that came out of the White House was like, okay, this wasn't like pre-planned, but sure, you're going to be in town. Yeah, we're happy to host you. You can come visit us at the White House. You're going to be, on the East Coast anyway. Netanyahu was scheduled to speak at the UN General Assembly Friday morning. Everyone in the room gets up and leaves when he gets up and speaks. And that's when he's basically sitting there pounding his chest, being like, Israel's never going to back down. We're going to fight everybody, putting his middle fingers up, just being like a child, basically. The day before that speech, Thursday, Trump hosted Erdogan at the White House. That's when he rolled out the red carpet. He has the big fancy, all the bells and whistles and all the trinkets in the welcome wagon. That was when Trump acknowledged that he probably was going to give Turkey the F-35s. He announced the nuclear deal, that they signed a nuclear deal that they were going to build, that the U.S. would build a nuclear power plant for Turkey. Back then, I speculated that this was all planned accordingly. They knew that Netanyahu was going to speak at the UN, and so they scheduled it so that Erdogan came the day before. And if I recall correctly, I might have to go check the timeline, but I think what happened was Netanyahu announced he was planning on coming to the White House. And then the next day, the White House announced that Erdogan would be coming the day before Netanyahu's speech. Now, I think what Netanyahu wanted to do back then is he wanted to come visit the White House the day before his speech to build up momentum, to kind of get the optics of him and Trump being on the same team and being partners and all that, and then walk into the General Assembly meeting with his chest puffed out, and thumping his chest and being like, we're the best. Trump's got our back. Israel's coming for all of you. Instead, Trump pushes him to Monday. He goes, yeah, you can come on Monday. All right. So you speak on Friday. That whole speech, total like flop. Everybody was like, that was a terrible speech. You looked very petty. You looked very angry. It didn't land well at all. He didn't look strong. He looked very weak. Then Netanyahu gets the whole weekend to cool off. The whole weekend, right? These days a news cycle is like a millennium, is like a decade. Multiple days go by, and then Sunday night, right before Netanyahu comes out, Trump announces that he's been meeting with these Arab leaders all week, and now we're going to have the Gaza peace. And then remember, Netanyahu comes to the White House, and that's when Trump says, oh yeah, we have the 20-point Gaza peace deal. That was the start of the whole Gaza peace deal. So total humiliation ritual for Netanyahu. The whole thing backfires, blows up in his face. And now the same thing is happening. Netanyahu's been saying for weeks, like the past month, I want to come visit the White House. And Trump's like, yeah, eventually you can come. And he's going to Turkey first. He's going to meet with Erdogan. He's going to do all, like, we're going to get some deals out of this week. I'm sure we're going to get some new trade deals announced, and other things are going to happen. And then Netanyahu, in the aftermath of all that, against that backdrop, is going to come in and, try to undo all that and try to be petty and try to characterize Turkey and Erdogan as the enemy. And so Trump comes out on Sunday and says, I guess this was on Saturday, this is 4th of July, and he says Netanyahu knows who the boss is, and he's like, yeah, I'll meet him as soon as next week, if maybe next week. This was a brief phone call with Axios. This is with Barak Ravid, of course. It's always Barak Ravid. Barak Ravid says, this is Barak Ravid giving a secondhand account of his conversation with Trump, or I guess a firsthand account, but a secondhand account of what Trump said. During their conversation, so the meeting might take place next week due to scheduling difficulties, because of course Trump's going to be in Turkey with Erdogan. During their conversation, the prime minister said that the United States is a guarantor of global freedom and that Israel greatly values the close relationship between the two nations. Netanyahu knows who the boss is. So this is a hilarious headline. So that takes us to this headline. Trump claims spoiled child Iran has agreed to most U.S. demands in negotiations. This was from Friday. So this is published on Friday. It says U.S. President Donald Trump said on Thursday, so this is published on Friday, but said on Thursday in a CNBC interview, he thinks Iran has agreed to just about everything we need in negotiations over a final accord between the two countries. Trump made the claim in a wide-ranging CNBC interview in which he discussed, among other things, various aspects of the war with Iran and ongoing negotiations on a final deal with the Islamic Republic. Asked during the interview whether the war, which began with a shock U.S.-Israeli offensive on February 28th before being halted by a temporary ceasefire on April 8th, was at risk of turning into one of the so-called forever wars that he pledged to avoid, Trump denied that there was any chance of that happening. Quote, I think they have agreed to just about everything we need, Trump said of Iran's conduct in negotiations over a final accord between the two countries. Let's just watch the video. We have the video.
When you ask me if this is a pragmatic end, you're not going to be in a forever war.
That's true.
And
see if usually this sound plays better if I'm playing it directly from X.
when you ask me if this is a pragmatic end, you're not going to be in a forever war.
That's true.
And
that's true.
there are other concerns, but
Joe, wait one second. You were in Vietnam for 19 years.
Right.
We were in Afghanistan for like 10 years. We were in the Korean War forever. We were in, I don't even mention World War I and World War II. They're biggies. But you know what? Stuff like this could have led to it. But we were in many, many years in every war. I've been there for 4 months. And what have I done? I've defeated them militarily. They're totally defeated militarily. They have some missiles left. We could wipe them out too. And I hit them 3 times last week very hard because they sent a drone into a ship. I hit them. Then they did something else and I hit them. I hit them 3 nights in a row. The week before I hit them 2 nights in a row very hard. And we're negotiating and we'll see whether or not. I think they've agreed to just about everything we need.
no. When you ask me if this is a pragmatic end, you're not going to be in
Okay, so that video, I thought that clip might include the quote I was looking for, but it's right here. So he says, Iran is a spoiled child and the bully of the Middle East. They've had their way for 47 years. You've had your way for many years with your parents, and all of a sudden they come down hard on you. It takes you a little while to get used to it. I personally think when he calls him a spoiled child and the bully of the Middle East, he's actually referring to Israel. Because if you look at what Iran has actually done, while there was a proxy system set up by I think Soleimani, I think that was done on behalf of Mossad. I think Mossad was actually running that. And if you really look at the history of the Middle East over the past 60 years, 70 years, 80 years. If you were to describe one country as a bully over the other countries, it would 100% be Israel. It would not be any other specific country. Yeah, there's been wars between countries and there's been conflict, but which country has exerted its dominance over the other countries to a very disproportionate level, considering its size and population? That would be Israel. And of course, Israel just takes and takes and takes and takes and takes. Spoiled child, I think, is a perfect metaphor to describe Israel. And so we have, so we'll land it here with these two. Likud minister calls Turkey's Erdogan a grotesque hybrid of Hitler and Sinwar. So the diaspora minister Chikli says vocally anti-Israel leader is a pathetic, blood-soaked zero and a patron of Hamas and ISIS as Israeli rhetoric against Ankara escalates. Quote, we all know, this is a post that he made on X, we all know how narcissistic, power-obsessed fanatics like you begin and how they end. The Jewish people have never feared mere flesh and blood from Pharaoh until today. You are nothing but a pathetic, blood-soaked zero who history will soon forget. Yeah, so again, more subversion of Trump. Like they're angry because Trump is boosting Erdogan and being like, this is my guy. And now you have all the Israeli ministers and leaders coming out and poo-pooing that. This is an interesting development. I just saw this as I was flipping through the tabs I had open. State comptroller, this is in Israel, government has no policy to combat foreign election meddling. A state comptroller's report released on Tuesday about the threat of foreign interference in Israeli elections found that the government has no national policy to combat the issue. Outgoing state comptroller Netanyahu, wow, that's an interesting name, Engelman said that Iran and other hostile actors are systematically exploiting social media to deepen social divisions in Israel, spread panic, and manipulate the public's perception of reality. Quote, we found that Israel's national preparedness is fundamentally inadequate. 9 years after the threat was first identified by the state, there is still no national policy and no government body is leading efforts to address the issue. Engelman said in a statement accompanying the issue of the report, a national action plan was presented to the prime minister a year ago, but it has not yet been reviewed, wrote Engelman, who also warned that foreign election interference could undermine public trust in the upcoming election. His report sounded an alarm over the fact that the Shin Bet only started preparing in January for the upcoming elections, slated to be held in October, while the National Security Council, quote, ceased dealing with the matter in August of 2025. Foreign election interference is even more likely given the advent of AI tools, which allow hostile elements to rapidly create highly credible fictitious identities and fake content on a huge scale, Engelman said. Quote, without an immediate and organized government response, attempts to interfere in Israel's domestic public discourse could even lead to harm to the state's sovereignty and undermine public trust in democratic processes, wrote the outgoing state comptroller. I wish to raise a warning flag. Leaving the gaps in addressing foreign influence in the digital sphere unresolved leaves the Israeli public exposed and demands decisive national action. In response to the report, the Central Elections Committee said that it established a dedicated task force to prepare for foreign election interference operations. Regarding the recommendation to establish a hotline for public inquiries, it should be emphasized that responsibility for addressing foreign influence lies with the security agencies, the committee said, seemingly passing primary responsibility for the issue off to the government. Quote, in this context, the committee is currently examining a suitable framework for receiving information from civil society groups, those are NGOs, with expertise in the field, based on criteria falling within the committee's mandate and authority, while upholding freedom of expression and campaigning, it said. That's the important part. Freedom of expression and campaigning. They're talking about the opposite of the First Amendment. What this comptroller is calling for, it's not about fortifying the election systems, as far as I can tell. It's about fortifying the discourse around elections and the discussion about the government and the candidates. They're worried that people are going to be getting bad information from bad actors. And so they want somebody to come in and police the language to make sure that only the quote unquote truth is being shared online. Quote, furthermore, any party that believes it has been harmed by improper influence may file a petition with the Elections Committee, which will be deliberated in the standard manner and on an expedited timeline. Foreign actors have tried to meddle in Israel's politics before. A joint study by the Institute for National Security Studies and the Institute for Research of the Methodology of Intelligence revealed that ahead of the 2022 Knesset elections, multiple covert campaigns unfolded on social media. One sought to fracture the religious Zionism party using dozens of fake Twitter accounts, posing as Israelis to urge far-right political leader Itamar Ben-Gvir to end his Atzma Yehudit party's joint electoral run with religious Zionism. So Atzma Yehudit is a political party. It stands for Jewish Power. It's literally a Jewish supremacist political party. Religious Zionism is Bezalel Smotrik's political party. Now, both of these are Jewish supremacist parties, and they're both ultra-Orthodox. So they have like basically identical platforms. It's just different people running them, different people vying for power, hungry for power. Another campaign aimed to suppress voter turnout, coordinating hundreds of accounts, including some posting in Arabic days before and on the election. After the vote, a small network of accounts across Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram sought to sow distrust in the results, spreading claims of election fraud and mobilizing protests, supporting by thousands of fake followers to amplify credibility. So notice I just read you the entire article. Not one time did they mention the actual election systems, the processes, the software, the way votes are, the chain of custody. None of that stuff was even mentioned. The entire discussion among election integrity and security was about freedom of speech and the concern that bad information was going to negatively influence people's votes in the election. This is what the fundamental difference between Israel and the United States at a societal level from a cultural standpoint. This is what everyone needs to understand. This is why they cannot be our greatest ally. I would debate whether or not they can even be a adequate partner. And you can sit here and say, but there are lots of nice people in Israel. Yeah, I'm sure there are. I'm sure there are plenty of nice people in Israel. There's plenty of nice people in North Korea, I'm sure too. There's plenty of nice people in Iran. There's plenty of nice people everywhere. That's not the issue here. The issue is the culture of the civilization. And the culture of this government is a crackdown on speech and a total rejection of the First Amendment as a principle of their society. And because of that, we should not be intermingling our policies and platforms with them. There should be a firewall between American culture and Israeli culture because they do not embrace free markets. They do not embrace freedom of speech. They don't embrace the Second Amendment. They don't embrace any of that stuff. That's why October 7th, by the way, that's why so many people died on October 7th is because nobody had a gun. There was nobody with a gun to stop the invaders because they don't believe in the Second Amendment. I mean, it's so obvious, but at the same time, it's not obvious to a lot of people. A lot of people will abandon their principles when it comes to their religious fanaticism. And that's just the way it is, unfortunately. Okay, so then the other two that I said I wanted to hit that were kind of a transition, Rahm Emanuel in Tel Aviv. Netanyahu is driving Israel toward a dead end. This is interesting. Not surprising because this guy was the architect of Obamacare, and he was, I think, Obama's chief of staff, if I'm not mistaken. A leading Democrat is visiting Tel Aviv this week, where he's expected to directly accuse Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of driving Israel into a dead end. Potential presidential candidate Rahm Emanuel plans to denounce Netanyahu and call for an end to U.S. subsidies of Israel's defense budget in a speech tomorrow at the Tel Aviv University. Quote, "You've lost Europe," Emanuel will say, according to remarks obtained by the Associated Press. Castigating Netanyahu for doing little to end the Iran war, he'll note that support for Israel is plummeting around the world. Now, this is not surprising because this guy is a Democrat operative to be anti-Netanyahu. But again, let's not fall into the fake paradigm, the Hegelian dialectic of left and right. And just assume, well, if the Democrats oppose Netanyahu, Netanyahu must be one of us. He must be our guy. No, that's not how it works. First of all, there's absolutely such thing as, the Hegelian dialectic is a false paradigm. You control both sides. You make them appear that they're at odds with one another, and that creates the illusion of choice. But I would also point to some of Chris Paul's musings about the Emanuel family. This guy's brother is Ari Emanuel, who was the guy who helped Trump put together the entire UFC 250 event. He's like the big Hollywood agent who has also been very critical of Israel and of Netanyahu. So it's interesting that these guys are stepping in now and doing this stuff and saying these things about Netanyahu. Again, I view this as more of like a game theory model where Netanyahu is taking Israel in a direction that I think the establishment is figuring out. This is not good. This is not good. We're going down a path, and these crazies that Netanyahu has brought in to run the government are not going to listen to reason. They're not going to listen to anything. They are on a mission from God by their own words, and they cannot be reasoned with. And that's why I think everything is now mobilizing against Netanyahu. Doesn't mean Netanyahu and his crazies are the good guys. It just means that we have a Hegelian dialectic that's now being directed at the deep state as opposed to for the benefit of the deep state. All right, so here's the last one we'll do on Israel. This is an interesting headline. Lawsuit says U.S. illegally shared confidential information on Iranian asylum seekers with Iran. A lawsuit filed today alleges that the Trump administration's immigration agencies have been sharing confidential information about Iranian asylum seekers with the Iranian government, violating national immigration regulations and endangering countless Iranians, court filings argue. The lawsuit depicts a coordinated campaign between the U.S. and Iranian governments to identify Iranians in immigration and customs enforcement, ICE, custody and pressure them to return to Iran, a marked departure from decades of diplomatic hostility between the two governments and an ongoing war. Roughly 600 Iranians were put in immigration detention last year, according to public records obtained by the National Iranian American Council. In June, an Iranian woman was among the 24 migrants the U.S. deported to the Central African Republic in a stark departure from decades-long practice of the U.S. of welcoming Iranian dissidents, exiles, and others since the 1979 Islamic Revolution forced a large number of Iranians to flee. Starting in March of 2025, the U.S. State Department arranged monthly meetings with Iranian officials using the Pakistani embassy as an intermediary, in which U.S. officials shared detailed, sensitive information about detained Iranian immigrants who the U.S. government hoped to deport. Lawyers for the Iranian American Legal Defense Fund and the Public Citizen Litigation Group wrote in a complaint. This is the lawsuit. The information included details about asylum applications filed by people who they say were persecuted for converting to Christianity or their sexuality, or for participating in women life freedom protests against the Iranian government in 2022, according to the lawsuit, which was filed in U.S. District Court in Washington, D.C. So the interesting part about this, like if you understanding everything that we now know about the NGO network, USAID, how these programs work, is they go into these foreign countries. A lot of times they bring their own operatives who come in there and they recruit locals, or they go to an existing group that might already exist and they say, hey, here's a ton of money to build out your operation, to hire more people and to expand your influence. Here's the agenda you're going to push. Here's the person you're going to support for office or whatever. So if we were to assume that these dissidents are not earnest Iranians who are trying to escape the Islamic Republic. I mean, the Islamic Republic has been around for 47 years. Why are they just now trying to escape the Islamic Republic? That doesn't make any sense. If you were trying to escape the Islamic Republic, I would assume you would have done that 47 years ago, or at least 40 years ago in the 80s and 90s. It does say right here that in the 90s, federal regulations passed in the late 1990s prohibit the government from sharing information that could reveal the individual getting deported that applied for asylum. So there was legislation put in place right before the NGO thing really started to pick up in the 2000s that says, hey, we're going to protect our operatives. These 600 Iranians that they say are on U.S. soil, I bet you these are probably USAID like operators, color revolution specialists. They could even be Mossad assets. The reason they were brought to the U.S. was because they had to escape the Iran government, right? They had to escape Iran, who was going to come after them the same way I would want our government to come after anybody on U.S. soil who is trying to subvert and overthrow our government, whether they're American or a foreigner, especially a foreigner. But even if it was an American, I would want them to be prosecuted by the government if they're trying to overthrow the government. That is, I mean, government 101, right? So these people flee to America. Now we have the State Department starting in March of 2025. So 2 months after Trump enters office, or less than 2 months, really, the U.S. State Department is meeting monthly with Iran and sharing at the Pakistani embassy and sharing detailed, sensitive information about the people that they have detained who they want to send back to Iran. I mean, to me, this seems like coordination at some level of figuring out this, like mapping out this network of bad actors who are the, you know, what we would call the evil twin in any government, but in this case, the evil twin inside Iran. Very, very, very interesting. Okay, so that was I said that was the last one. We're going to transition to Italy now, but before we do, let's take a quick little break. This is Geopolitics with Ghost. We'll be back here after some sponsors.
A long, long time ago, a writer went into a dangerous cave. Because he was on an adventure. Or like he smelled like an adventure. But the cave was protected by spiders and lizards. No, it was snakes. Snakes? Why did it have to be snakes? Whatever it was, the raider wasn't scared of it because it was Ghost. The lotion raider. Then he found the golden deodorant. That's not deodorant, that's the tallow bar. It was soft disclosure. Ghost had exactly 1 second to switch it. Or the whole cave explodes! And then the boulders started chasing him. Run, Ghost, run! Oh no, he dropped the soft disclosure. I got it. I understand its power now. That lotion is an important artifact and it belongs in every household. Visit softdisclosure.com and use promo code LotionWaiter for 15% off.
Science proves that a healthy immune system is the body's first defense against the smallest of ailments to the most catastrophic. Coriolus versicolor is the most sought-after, all-natural supplement for both humans and pets to help boost the immune system. There are over 400 studies worldwide on its effectiveness in humans, including Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, MD Anderson Cancer Center, and now from the University of Pennsylvania School of Veterinary Medicine. Together, we can help reverse this terrible tide now plaguing your loved ones and give them the immune-boosting supplements that they need.
It's officially a new era for gold and silver. Gold has broken $5,000 an ounce and silver has surged past $100. In 2025 alone, gold jumped 64%, while silver skyrocketed 150%. And with political and economic uncertainty ahead, 2026 could bring even bigger moves. After such a historic run, a pullback is normal. Metals moved fast, so some consolidation is expected, but top analysts are calling for even higher prices. We've seen the first bank failure of 2026 with regulators shutting down Metropolitan Capital Bank and Trust in Chicago. Could more follow? It's no surprise Americans are pulling money from banks and turning to the proven protection of gold and silver. Big news, Goldco is celebrating America's 250th anniversary with a limited time bonus. Get up to 10% free gold or silver, plus free storage and a free home safe with qualifying cash purchase. This offer won't last, so act now. Are we seeing the early signs of another 2008-style crisis? Don't wait for the next shoe to drop. Protect your wealth with precious metals, because in uncertain times, gold and silver shine brightest. Visit badlandsgold.com today for your free 2026 gold and silver kit and bonus buy. That's badlandsgold.com. Unexpected health emergencies don't wait, and with Save Pulse, you can stay prepared. From trusted medications like amoxicillin, azithromycin, ivermectin, and hydroxychloroquine to the medical emergency kit designed to help support over 30 common illnesses, Save Pulse makes it easy to stock up on essential health supplies. At Save Pulse, keeping your family prepared has never been easier, and it's all delivered through a simple, streamlined ordering process at prices you can feel good about. Whether you need an emergency kit or you're stocking up on everyday essentials, now's the time to be ready for whatever comes your way. Visit badlandsmedia.tv/meds today and use promo code Badlands to save over 20% or to save 20%. That's badlandsmedia.tv/meds, promo code Badlands. Okay, so welcome back to the program. This is Geopolitics with Ghost. I am your host, Gordon McCormick, the ghost of bass Patrick Henry. And today is July 7th, 2026. And we are in the second half of the show. We are going to go a little longer today. My kids are staying at their grandmother's house, my mother-in-law's house tonight. So, so we got a little bit more time. So I don't have to worry about anybody running in here and flipping over tables and chairs at 4:00. So we'll go a little longer today, and we missed the show on Friday because of the holiday. So we got a lot to catch up on. I do want to get to Italy, Europe, and then Colombia, which we teased this morning on Badlands Daily. Before we do, let's go to one last story that connects from Israel, that connects Israel now to Europe. And that's this story. Netanyahu, Israel will protect. Let me adjust the layout to here. There we go. Make it a little bigger. So Israel will protect freedom of navigation at sea. This is an interview he did, or what says Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said during a visit to the naval base in Haifa. I set a simple objective, he says. The objective of the Navy and of Israel is to ensure shipping routes and freedom of maritime trade, which are so important to the state of Israel. Netanyahu's comment comes as Iran continues to strike tankers in the Strait of Hormuz, and after the Iran-backed Houthis in Yemen issued new threats to Israeli ships in the Red Sea. So that's the context of those comments, but this is also against the backdrop of Netanyahu making comments about the Mediterranean. And so here it is. So this is during, as it said, he appeared on Fox News 2 days in a row. This is, I believe, his appearance from yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. And he's with, is that Stelter? I think that's Stelter, right?
The other thing I'd like to say, because we're on the verge of the president's going to Turkey, look, Turkey is a great country, but it's governed by a man who calls openly for the annihilation of Israel. He occupies half of Cyprus, a NATO country. He's threatening Greece, another NATO country, and he talks openly about conquering Jerusalem. His foreign minister, his number two, said that the Jewish state hasn't a place among humanity. Basically, it has to be wiped out. His interior minister, said he looks forward to be the governor of Jerusalem. Well, for a regime infected by the Muslim Brotherhood, an extreme movement that hates America and chants death to America from that side of the spectrum, I don't think they should be given F-35s or the engines for their fighter jets, because that'll upset the power balance in the Middle East, which is ultimately guaranteed by Israeli air superiority and also by, I think, by America's posture in the Middle East.
Yeah. So the key word that I wanted y'all to hear was threatening Greece. I mean, Cyprus too, but threatening Greece and Cyprus. So let's go back to the map. So again, Greece right here, Cyprus right here. And Cyprus has a line going through it. That's because I believe in the 70s, there was a war between Turkey and Cyprus where Turkey took the north half of the island and it's been part of Turkey ever since. So Netanyahu says threatening Greece and Cyprus. We've been talking about this on the show. I threw that random, I don't even know if I called it prediction, but just kind of like that random idea out like a month ago over that maybe we might see Greece get involved. And if I were Netanyahu, what would I do? I think I have that clip here. We're not going to watch the whole thing because it's kind of a long clip. I kind of go on a long tangent, but I'll watch the first like 30 seconds of it. Here's what I think Netanyahu is going to do. Or let me just put it this way. Here's what I would do, or what I would think about doing if I was in the Israeli military, strategizing for them. I would think about doing a trilateral alliance, like a trilateral agreement between Greece and Ukraine, and creating a three-way alliance against Turkey. Because Ukraine and Turkey, while Ukraine needs to play nice with Turkey because of Istanbul, if they want to get access to if they want access to the ocean at all, they got to play nice with Turkey. Okay. But Turkey and Russia are very cozy. Ukraine has already done aggressive moves against Turkey. I'm pretty sure they sank one of their ships, right, and then apologized for it. They definitely have been doing aggressive action against Turkey already. And that's because of Turkey's relationship ever since. I'm just going to skip ahead, I think. But yeah, you get the point. So we might see Greece open up, attack Turkey. And I think I mentioned Cyprus in there too. Well, not so crazy anymore. Maybe we will see this happening. So here's Netanyahu telegraphing that, telling you that Greece is now a character in his soap opera that he's trying to orchestrate. And so that brings us to full circle, because if we go back to the map, Greece and Italy are, right there, right? So Italy is going to be a player here as well. And Meloni then would be the leader that we want to discuss. So let's go all the way back to the meeting between Trump and Erdogan, and we'll listen to this last question about Meloni, and then we'll talk about Meloni in Italy.
Mr. Meloni, that True Social post with the restraining order.
I don't know. I think she's a nice person, actually. We had a bad relationship. It became a little bad because she refused to help us. Again, I didn't put a heavy press on her, but she refused to get involved with the Hormuz Strait, or you could also say just Iran. She refused to get involved. So it soured my relationship with her a little bit. But I like her. I think she's a nice person, actually. But I think she made a mistake. They get a lot of their oil from. We don't get any of it. We have a lot of oil. The United States has more oil than anybody. And when you add Venezuela to it, it's like we have far more oil than anybody. We don't need the straits. We do this because we think it's an important thing to do. But she just wasn't there for us. And I wasn't happy about that. You can imagine, I wasn't happy about that.
Mr. President, you seem to express optimism that a deal between Russia and Ukraine is close. Why?
Okay, so yeah, as Trump said, I didn't press her hard. It's not like I pressed her hard or anything, but she didn't get involved in the Strait of Hormuz. So yeah, I'm going to pick on her, and I'm going to, our relationship has kind of hit some snags here. And of course, he's referring to last month when he at the G7 accused her of begging him for a selfie, which he turned down because he wasn't happy with her because of the lack of support with the Strait of Hormuz blockade. And then most recently, he posted this on Sunday. Restraining order needed. So I love that he opens up the responses. I really like her. She's a super nice person. Whenever when Trump says that about people, I feel like he, for the most part, there's exceptions, but he's telling you, he's like, I don't really actually dislike this person, but right now I'm not getting along with them. Now, as I went through, I'll go through it a little deeper now than we did on Daily. And for those who missed Daily, we were talking about this. I did show the Q post. I don't do a lot of Q post references because I just don't like the whole decoder culture. I just don't jive with it. But I followed Q from the very beginning. And a lot of that stuff, material is like what got me involved in doing this. I wouldn't be doing this right now if it weren't for Q, probably, I would say. But if you go look at this post 3539 from July 29th, 2019, responding to somebody who said Salvini is a patriot. And the Q says, Italy is with POTUS. Attempts by D's to prevent disclosure of Five Eyes material was denied. They are powerless. Enjoy the show. So Italy is with POTUS. I think that reinforces kind of everything that we've talked about on this show as it relates to Italy. So I went deeper into looking into what's going on here. So why is Trump ostensibly having this little spat with our girl Meloni? Because I think Meloni is our girl. Now, Matteo Salvini is her deputy prime minister. And just to remind everybody in 30 seconds, Matteo Salvini was running for prime minister in 2017. He did a copy paste of the entire 2016 MAGA campaign brand. He just changed it to Salvini, but everything else remained basically the exact same. Italy instead of America. Make it great. And his entire political party that he was running was funded, not fully, but funded in part by Rosatom, which is the Russian energy company. And that discovery led to like a scandal and investigation by Italian authorities and European authorities that maybe Salvini was a Putin puppet. And so that prevented him from actually becoming prime minister. And so instead, Meloni, who's his ally, she later in 2023, she becomes prime minister and he becomes the deputy prime minister, who I believe is still technically under investigation for being a Russian puppet. But again, that I look at all that and I see sovereign alliance. I see sovereign alliance. I don't see the allegations they're making. Italy, again, as I said this morning, has a very unstable political landscape. I think their average government lasts like 12 months. Meloni right now she took office and it wasn't 2023. It was 2022, October 22nd, 2022. So she's coming up on 4 years in October. She's at like more than 3.5 years, well past 3.5 years. And she, back in May, set the record. She's now the second longest serving Italian government since World War II. And come September 4th, she will become the longest serving prime minister, continuous prime minister since World War II in Italy. That is how unstable, because what happens is that the parliament doesn't, loses the support and then the government dissolves, just like in Israel. So in Italy, like many other European countries, the parliament, you elect the parliament members, and then the parliament members actually they don't elect the prime minister, they elect the president. This is also how I think Germany worked when Hitler came into power. I think it was the if I'm not mistaken, it was the Reichstag elected the president, and then the president appointed Hitler, and then the president died, and then Hitler used his power as chancellor to, which is like, I guess, their prime minister, to consolidate the offices of president and chancellor into one, and that's how he made the Führer office, the executive and the legislative together. So Italy does the same thing. The parliament elects the president then appoints the prime minister. So what Meloni's trying to do right now, there's two reforms that she's currently has underway. The first reform is this reform called the Nordio reforms, which is an effort to reform the judiciary. This is from March 22nd, 2026. Italians begin voting in high-stakes justice referendum. It says voters must decide whether to back constitutional changes to separate the career paths of judges and public prosecutors, an issue that has long roiled domestic politics and split Italy's judicial self-governing body into two separate entities. The vote comes at the end of a heated campaign which pitted the Meloni-led Yes camp against center-left opponents supporting the No. The opposition, led by the Democratic Party and the Five Star Movement, has warned that the reform would undermine judicial independence and leave room for political interference, saying that would allow Meloni to tighten her grip on power. The government rejects the criticism, arguing that reform is needed to curb the politicized election of members at the self-ruling High Council of the Judiciary after scandals exposed backroom deals over senior prosecutor appointments. yeah, and so this ends up failing. Like this effort ends up failing. It doesn't get passed. And I looking into it, I believe Meloni's argument was that, and her camp's argument was that the judiciary just has way too much power, and there's this weird collusion that goes on between prosecutors and judges, and the way that prosecutors are appointed, and they're basically appointed by judges, and obviously that's going to create like a conflict of interest when it comes to the politics of it all, and like what prosecutors are going to do in court and all of that. So this reform would break the judiciary into two different bodies. One would be judges, one would be prosecutors. And instead of having a single career track where you become either a judge or a prosecutor, you would pursue becoming a prosecutor or pursue becoming a judge, and there wouldn't be as much intermingling between them politically. So that's one reform that she is still trying to get passed, that she says is necessary in order to basically restore the constitutional legitimacy of Italy and create a more populist system. The other thing that she's trying to do is this thing called the premierato. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Premierato. So that's this one. And so Meloni pushes change to let voters directly elect Italy's premier and bid to make governments last. And so the idea is that instead of the voters just electing the parliament and then the parliament electing the president and then the president appointing the prime minister, voters would elect the members of parliament, but they would also on the same ballot elect the prime minister. And the prime minister who wins would get a 5-year term. They couldn't be removed at any given time because the support in the parliament collapses. And that would then give more stability to the government. So then the prime minister would have 5 years to get things done that needed to, that they ran on. This needs a lot of political support in order to get this referendum pushed, because there are other things that are part of it. Let me see if I have those pulled up. I think I do. Yeah. So in the current Italy, the voters elect parliament. And then in this new system, the voters directly choose the prime minister too. In the current Italy, president appoints the prime minister based on parliamentary majority. And in the new system, the prime minister has direct electoral mandate. In the current Italy, governments can change without new elections, because I believe that the president can get rid of the prime minister and then appoint a new prime minister. It's a little confusing how that whole system works. They have a confusing system, but in the new system, you can't just replace a prime minister midterm. Like you would have to have like there would be a whole process for removing the prime minister. I would assume similar to an impeachment of a U.S. president. In the current Italy, parliament remains central. In the new, meaning that's the most powerful entity. In the new system, the executive would become much stronger. So the executive would be able to exercise a little bit more authority. In the current Italy, the president is a key crisis referee, and then in the new Italy, this role, the role of the president shrinks. So the president becomes a much less important office because the president is no longer appointing the prime minister, and I believe there's other duties as well. So it sounds like the prime minister is really considered in Italy's system to be more of like an executive position. I know in other systems like Israel, it's considered more of like a legislative system. I think that's correct. But anyway, that's the breakdown. So the point is that Meloni has, because she's been in office, for going on 4 years, she has widespread public support in Italy for what she's doing. She's a populist candidate and she is very popular, as is Matteo Salvini. What she doesn't have is support among necessarily the political elite. They all view her as like a crazy right winger. Like a crazy right-wing populist candidate. So what's happened ever since Trump has started doing this all began on June 19th. On June 19th, Trump, that was when Trump did the whole, she was begging for me to take a selfie with her. And then in response to that, her chief diplomat, who was about to go to the U.S. to meet with, to do like a U.S. visit, he cancels his visit. He's like, "We're not doing this. We're not coming if you're going to talk about us like this." And that kind of started the rift. And because of that, now it's building more. There's been more of these little kind of silly, childish, almost stories about Trump and Meloni not getting along anymore. And because of that, you have this story. This is from a Roman newspaper. Let's see. So here's the article about Meloni where Meloni slams Trump. She put a video out saying that it was ridiculous to say that she begged him for a photo. That never happened. She's like, this is nonsense. This never actually happened. Trump's being a clown. And so she cancels the trip. And then here is from, when is this article is from, this is from a Roma, which is a local newspaper in Rome. And I believe this was published on, it's early July, if I'm not mistaken. It might be June. If I can get it to actually translate to English. Will it do it? I don't know if it will. Here we go. All right. Thank you. There's not a date. There's not a date on this, I don't think. 20 Giugiano. What is 20 Giugiano? I think that's the 20th of June. Yeah, but I think that's citing that picture. Anyway, this is from the last 3 weeks, this article. And the headline is Reactions to Trump's Attack on Meloni. Mattarella calls the Prime Minister Fazzolaro. These are all people who I think are like political opponents of Meloni. Delusions. Tajani cancels visit to the United States. That's the chief diplomat. And Schlein, unacceptable, but enough submissive attitudes. These are like all statements from these people. Reactions from the center right defending the prime minister were harsh, but solidarity also comes from the opposition. So, and when they say harsh, they mean harsh against Trump. So the president of the Republic, Sergio Mattarella, called Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni a phone call of solidarity that followed the words of U.S. President Donald Trump. Giovan Battista Fazzolaro, God, these are crazy Italian names, undersecretary to the Prime Minister's office, is very harsh, but the entire center right is united to defend the Prime Minister. According to Fazzolaro, Trump's delusions about Giorgia Meloni are just the latest episode of attacks and insults directed at European leaders. With his inappropriate statements, he succeeded in the difficult aim of making the U.S. unpopular with the entire European continent, damaging not only Europe, but above all, the United States. Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani has decided to cancel his visit to the United States, scheduled for June 21st and 22nd. So this must have been published June 20th. This was published about 3 weeks ago, a little less than 3 weeks ago. He announced it himself in a post on social media explaining that President Trump's serious and offensive words towards Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni offended all of Italy. The Italy-U.S. Business Forum in Miami was also canceled. So they canceled a business forum in Miami. They've been hosting a ton of these forums in Miami. Saudi Arabia did one like a month or two back. And in the afternoon, 8 hours after the U.S. leader's attack, Democratic Party Secretary Eli Schlein also spoke out, saying Trump's attacks on Prime Minister Meloni are unacceptable and must be forcefully rejected. We do not accept insults directed at the government of our country, and we continue to defend Italian institutions. We expect, however, that the right in this country will start doing more of this and understand how wrong the submissive attitude towards Trump was. Then you have Fabio Rappelli, who's the vice president of the House of Representatives. He says, Trump's words, I think, are lies. I've known Giorgia for a few years. I rule out her ever being able to beg anyone. Rappelli points out, so this statement starts from a lie. He notes that Donald Trump spent laudatory words towards him until the Italian government pointed out its independence by its unwillingness to use U.S. military bases as American platforms for war actions. And then this other person, Mara Carfagna, portraying the Italian prime minister as a leader begging is false, offensive, unacceptable for the entire country. And it goes on and on. There's so many more people who are listed, and they all give their kind of a similar take on this, where they're all like expressing their outrage and their support for Meloni. These are all people who have opposed Meloni, who have accused her of being a Trump stooge, who have opposed her reform programs, and are now rallying around her and saying, we have to back her. And she's now getting this mandate from across the political spectrum, including the Democratic Party. She's considered like hardcore right wing, far right is what they call her in Italy. And now she has the support of the left because she's being attacked by President Trump. And the only thing that the left hates more than her is President Trump. So that's the Hegelian dialectic. We then have this article from AP. This is from July 2nd, so 5 days ago. Facing barbs and pressure from Trump, Europe's leaders close ranks. And I actually have the highlighted version, the highlighted portions right here, where it says, European leaders rallied to Meloni's side, thawing what had been a frosty relationship over her hard-right political roots. So Meloni not only did not have support inside of the Italian political class because she's considered like a far-right populist, she also didn't have support among the European leaders at the EU because, again, they also consider her a far-right populist. But because she's now the victim, the target of Trump's ire, they are now rallying around her, and they're like, let's, even if it's opportunism, I mean, I doubt all of them or many of them actually view her as, as like this great figure now. They might just be using her as an instrument in their own mind, but they're a lot more likely to go along with whatever she's doing, if for no other reason, just to piss off Trump and to drive a deeper wedge between her and Trump. And so that in their own mind, Italy moves away from what Trump is doing and goes on its own path. Which, of course, I think is the Sovereign Alliance 5D chess they're doing against Europe right now. He's running, as I said in this morning's brief, Trump is running a psychological warfare operation against the Italian political elite by, basically acting like the big bad American bully. And so here's another article that was published 4 days ago. So we've heard about what her agenda is domestically, right? She wants to do those two big reforms. There's other stuff she wants to do, but those are the two big ones: the judiciary reform and then the reform of the prime minister. How it functions. These are constitutional reforms that we're talking about. Here is from 4 days ago, July 3rd. This is from Andalo, I think it's how you say it. It's the Turkish news outlet. Turkey's Erdogan, Italy's Meloni discussed bilateral ties and regional issues by phone. Turkish President Recep Erdogan on Friday held a phone call with Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni to discuss bilateral relations as well as regional and global issues. Turkey's communications director said during the call, Erdogan said Turkey is working to strengthen cooperation with Italy in all areas, particularly the defense industry, and stressed the importance of taking new steps to further boost bilateral ties, according to a statement that the communications director posted on U.S. social media platform X. Erdogan also said Turkey expects next week's NATO leaders summit in the Turkish capital, Ankara, to strengthen unity among allies. The statement said Meloni is expected to attend the summit set to take place Tuesday and Wednesday. And then I have this other headline and article from over a year ago, April 29th, 2025, Turkey, Italy to strengthen defense cooperation and boost trade. So I went and I asked the AI, I said, describe the relationship between Giorgia Meloni and Erdogan, and Giorgia Meloni and Turkey in general. And what I received was this. Stand by for processing, waiting for it to load. Loading. Where did that go? Here it is. Okay, so the AI said that Meloni is looking to push, ever since taking office, Meloni has been pushing NATO towards Turkey to make Turkey more of the center of gravity in the NATO political sphere. She is absolute. And then I asked it, I was like, so does that mean that Meloni is supporting Erdogan and supporting Turkey over Western Europe? And it said, yes, Meloni has been aligning with Erdogan on issues and pivoting away from France, Germany, and Britain, who are traditionally considered the power centers of NATO. So basically, as she is gaining clout in Europe, she is moving the European mind, the Overton window, towards Turkey and away from Paris, away from London, away from Berlin. That's interesting to me. And again, I think what this is going to ultimately do is it's going to undo NATO, because at a certain point, these Western European countries, which it's hard to imagine them not wanting NATO, like just doing away with NATO, even without the United States, throwing NATO, like NATO has been such a useful vehicle for them. Why would they get rid of it? Well, a great reason for them to defect from NATO would be if Turkey became like the ruler of NATO. If Turkey becomes the power center of NATO, why would France or Britain or Germany stay in it and become, vassals of Turkey? So that's where it looks like this is going. It looks like that might be how they, using 5D chess, using incentive structures, that's how you basically trick the European countries into leaving NATO, is by making the center of NATO Turkey, which they definitely don't want Turkey to be the center of NATO. They won't even allow Turkey to be a full member of the European Union, which I don't even think they want to do. I don't even think Erdogan wants to do that anymore. But when Erdogan first came into power 27 years ago, one of the first things he did was he applied. I think that was a process that was already underway, but what happened was that he comes into office, and then Turkey is recognized, I think it was in 1999, recognized as a kind of like a junior partner in Europe. It's called an observing member of the European Union. And that was Erdogan trying to pivot towards Europe and make Turkey more of a European nation. And so now he's kind of been straddling the line between Europe and the Middle East, and now becoming a friend of Putin and China and BRICS and all of it. So Erdogan has always been the great enigma, as has Turkey, and that has, I think, worked in the favor of the Sovereign Alliance. Okay. So now we're done with that. Let's go to Colombia. Colombia, so we'll spend the next 30 minutes or so talking about Colombia. We'll just talk about Colombia until we are sick of talking about Colombia, because this one is an amazing development. So Gustavo Petro has been like shit posting basically on X, and it's not even shit posting because he's posting facts. He's naming names, he's naming timelines, he's naming organizations as it relates to the stolen election. He's openly accusing foreign interference. He's openly saying that there were foreign interference in. Let me pull up his X account right here. So like you'll see right here, he says, "No, Martin, you're wrong. I was selected with E14 forms that were unmodifiable once they were uploaded to the public thanks to security algorithms." So these E14 forms is what he's been talking about a bunch. I don't really understand quite what these are, but as I understand it, it's like validating that that like the person voting is a Colombian citizen. I think that's what, because the crux of what he is saying is that foreigners are voting in their election. That's what he said happened. He said the civil unit of digital witnesses, which grew to 70,000 Colombian citizens, many of them high-level experts, managed to detect how the E14 forms were being modified after being uploaded. He's responding to this guy, Martin Santos, who is this clown? And this guy's MPA. He might be, is he like a senator or something, some sort of congressman, parliament member in Colombia, maybe. But this guy, Martin Santos, says it is incoherent and irresponsible to question the same electoral system that elected him. Being like, he's saying that elections are being stolen, and yet he was elected by the same system in 2022. This is the same cognitive dissonance that a lot of MAGA has. Well, why would Trump be questioning the election if he himself was elected through that apparatus? Well, there's probably an explanation for that. We don't quite understand it, but it's possible that The election was unrigged. It was possible that the whole thing we were told was just, the whole story of like the election and how it unfolded was a lie. I don't know. I'm not going to try to make sense of it, but it's very clear that Trump had the mandate to become president and nothing was going to stop that, which is why a large reason why I think the deep state allowed it to happen. So I want to look at some of these posts. Let's look at the first one. So this is on Sunday, is it? I'm waiting for it to load so I can pull up the date. I'll read through this whole post. This is a really long post, but I'll read through it. I didn't get a chance to read through it on daily, but I'll read through it now so you can get a sense of what he's doing. If this thing will actually load. Here it is. So first we get a post from Trump, this is July 6th. So this is Monday at 11:09 a.m. And he posts this picture. He's posting he's been doing this a lot lately. He's been posting like a before and after shot of some of these monuments and statues in DC that they've been, a lot of them will have like graffiti on them from the Summer of Love 2020. This one actually isn't, this one is not like this. This one is just old and dirty, it looks like. This is Simon Bolivar. And you can just see it. It's just old and dirty. It's not polished. And it's, here's a before shot. It says before Simon Bolivar statue. And then here's an after. It looks much more polished. It's been, given new life, basically. But a very subtle difference compared to a lot of these other statues that have been like totally graffitied with like spray paint and stuff. Kind of a random post by Trump. 50 minutes later at 11:59 a.m., this is what Gustavo Petro posts. He is responding to somebody named Danielle Coronel, who says, what Minister Lara claimed is different. He asserted that Ivan Cepeda, who is the presidential candidate that Gustavo Petro supported, disavowed the election results, which is an interpretation. The former candidate has not said that. So this guy is trying to say, well, Cepeda's not saying the election is illegitimate. He's just kind of questioning some of the things that happened during the election. He's not saying the results are illegitimate. And that's when Gustavo Petro steps in and says, no. Here's the whole post. We have all the information about how, from an IP server located in Los Angeles, California, owned by the Batista brothers, integrated into the scrutiny operation, algorithms were used that substantially varied, and this is written in Spanish and translated to English, so there might be some grammatical issues here, that substantially varied the vote in favor of Abelardo. He's the guy who won. The algorithms that rigged the electoral results were used with the electoral consensus of those who never vote to be replaced by voters who could do so several times or without voters in homogeneous jury polling stations. The polling stations abroad where Abelardo got 177,000 votes. These are polling stations that are outside of Colombia that like Colombians abroad, I guess, would use to vote. Ahead of Cepeda, have jury members from Colombia who are not residents of the U.S. and Spain, which is illegal, and of voters brought in for the Soccer World Cup who were able to vote 7 times in the ballot boxes with the names of those who never vote. The same thing happened in various regions of Antioquia and Medellin and Norte de Santander. I know I'm butchering that. It's okay. And in polling stations in northern Bogota. So he's saying that the same person was voting. Some people were voting as many as 7 times, or you had people who had never voted before. Other people were using their name to vote. And this was happening abroad. And then he's saying this also happened in Colombia, in Medellin and Bogota and these other areas. So then he continues. That's why my son found out that someone had already voted in his name. So this is the son of the sitting president said that he went to vote and somebody had already cast a vote for him. The company that supplied rigged algorithms and other support to the Batista brothers is an Israeli private intelligence firm named Black Cube. Balart is the lobbying firm to which they paid millions of dollars to clean up Abelardo's quite dirty image and the one in charge of convincing Trump to support Abelardo. From my phone conversation with Trump, I was able to confirm that he didn't know I didn't support De La Espriella, who's Abelardo, because of his old ties to drug trafficking and the genocide in Colombia. I hope that amid his concerns, he has time to call his intelligence agencies so they can tell him, talk about Trump, so they can tell him who Abelardo de la Espriella is and why he is a U.S. citizen and who his partners are, including alias Beliche. So there's somebody named Beliche. We don't know who that is, but basically Gustavo Petro is telling us, here's a person you should look into, Beliche. Colombia's current president is faced with evidence of electoral fraud via algorithms and with prohibited foreign financing in our constitution. Colombia's president, according to the decision of the Colombians, is the philosopher Ivan Cepeda. We have suffered the hardest blow to national sovereignty since the Spanish reconquest in the years of the Patria Boba. The cybersecurity systems of the registry that should have detected the entry of algorithms and the manipulation of E14 forms from abroad belong to private U.S. or Israeli companies. The registry, clumsily or corruptly, has handed over the security of the Colombian people's vote to companies whose governments, which control them according to their national legislation, already had a candidate in Colombia, which is why there was no alarm. Colombia's president does not recognize the legitimacy of the incoming government. Abelardo did not win the elections. The national majorities are summoned this July 20th to give the cry of national independence in all public squares. So he's saying, he's basically saying, let's have our own January 6th. He's saying, let's all come out and show our in solidarity and peacefully demonstrate that we are not accepting the outcome of this election. This is 2 weeks from now, July 20th. Now, I think Trump posting this Simon Bolivar statue is basically him almost signaling to Petro, like, it's time, like, go time, go. Petro and Maduro talk about this guy all the time, Simon Bolivar, who was the George Washington of northern South America, Colombia and Venezuela, liberated them from Spain. He was alive when George Washington was alive. He died when George Washington died. He was 16 years old. He carried around a lock of hair that he said was sent to him by George Washington. I think I looked into it deeper. It was probably sent to him by one of George Washington's close confidants who would have had it years after he died, because the the Bolivar Revolution didn't begin until 1807, 7 or 8 years after Washington died. But the point is that this guy is on par with George Washington in Colombia and Venezuela. He's like the most legendary of all historical figures. So now let's look at some of the other posts by Gustavo Petro. So he posts as well. He's responding to stand by for processing. Got a little bit of a glitch there. Okay, hopefully I'm not glitching. He's responding to a post that says #politics. Looks like this is some sort of a media outlet. The Conservative Party, and they tag him, described President Gustavo Petro's statements refusing to recognize the legitimacy of Abelardo de la Espriella's election as president as, quote, grave and irresponsible. And his response to that, and then they go on to read the full statement, which is something like, we fully support Abelardo, whatever. Gustavo Petro responds. He says, of course, my statements are serious, but they're not irresponsible. They are completely proven. The one who won elections by popular vote was Ivan Cepeda. Abelardo's victory was achieved with algorithms from California, and the algorithms were made by private intelligence companies from Israel. Colombian and U.S. justice, because the crimes were committed on U.S. territory, will have all the evidence. Tomorrow, the evidence will be received by the parliamentary bloc of the historic pact, delivered by the teams of digital witnesses who conducted the investigation from the citizenry itself. So he's saying that this was like a grassroots populist investigation where these witnesses, these people who were watching this stuff in real time during the elections, noted all this stuff happening, and they're the ones who put together all this evidence. Kind of like, a lot of the American people, like American citizen journalists did. Here's another post that he made, and then we're going to go look at his timeline here in a second. He said, immediate extradition ordered in the case of in case of capture of alias Chiquito Malo, which I think means bad hombre or bad boy or something like that. Responsible for the organized armed group Clan del Golfo. We've talked about Clan del Golfo many times. They are the largest cocaine cartel operating in Colombia. Whoever still dreams of prosecuting me for drug trafficking in the U.S. will have to go to great lengths to slander, because if the drug trade in Colombia has any enemy, it's me. I stripped them of political power they had, and now life's paradox, with political support from the U.S. government and through the fraud they orchestrated with Netanyahu's help, they want to return to power. So he's basically already put an extradition request out for in case they're captured. I assume this is going to multiple governments. And now let's go look at Gustavo Petro's account. Oh, wait, actually, there's one more that I wanted to show. So before this all happened, before Trump posted the Bolivar picture, this is on July 3rd. So this is on Friday. I screenshot this because I was like, oh, this is an interesting one. And I sent this to Chris and a few others. And I was like, got to keep an eye on this because, maybe this Abelardo Esprilla guy isn't who we think he is. And the weird part about Esprilla was that he was the lawyer for Alex Saab, who's a Maduro guy. And yet this Esprilla is being supported unanimously by all the neocons and the Zionists who hate Maduro. That doesn't make any sense. That's what kind of made my spidey senses go off originally. So here's Gustavo Petro. He's quote posting this Blue Radio Colombia, which is a news outlet in Colombia. Says Fanavi issues alert over potential VAT, which is value added tax increase in government's tax reform de la Esprilla. And Gustavo Petro says they're going to slap a VAT tax or a VAT, which is a value added tax, on eggs too. Don't say I didn't warn you. They want, like Duque, to pay the high interest rate on the bonds with which they indebt the state, and which the Bank of the Republic guarantees with the pockets of the working people. He's referring to Ivan Duque, who was the president of Colombia before he was, and who was definitely deep state and was allegedly, according to Petro, gonna allow the deep state to use Colombia as a staging ground, against Maduro, to like launch an invasion of Venezuela and maybe start a civil war. Let's see. That's why, back to his post, that's why on 4 occasions they didn't let the tax reform pass, the one with taxes on the richest. The role of progressivism today isn't to see who the candidates for 2027 are, but to go out peacefully with the people to defend the social reforms as soon as they attack the people. So he's basically saying, hey, if you're a progressive, your job is not to go get ready for the next election. Your job is to go out and refute this election right now, which was just stolen from you. This is very based. This guy is super based. Okay, so now let's just go look at his X feed and see what he's been posting about lately. So he did post about this guy, Dan Newland. So not only is he accusing Israel and the U.S. government and Netanyahu of being involved in this, he's also accusing Google and Meta, Facebook, of being involved in this. He says he's reposting somebody who says this is Dan Newland, the American lawyer who apparently donated $1.8 million to the campaign of the fraudulent one. I think they're referring to Abelardo. This is a serious crime that automatically annuls the elections of the past of June 21st. De la Esprilla is not a legitimate president. And from what I understand, I think foreign like investment in political campaigns is illegal under Colombian law. That's my understanding. And then where is the other one? He had... Okay.
He ordenado conformar un grupo.
So I think this video is, let me see. Yeah, so this video, here's Abelardo speaking. And so Gustavo Petro posts this video of him addressing the public. And he says, listen, Mr. Abelardo, you've already responded about why Mr. Dan Newland put $1.9 million into Google to advertise for you. Is that expense reflected in your accounts? Don't you know that foreign financial support is prohibited by the Constitution? In light of your proposal to contaminate Santander's water, which is like a region in Colombia, with gold mining in Santurbán, you're a partner of one of the owners of the mining company, Mr. Giacomo. Don't you think that breaks public trust with that? Or do you not believe in ethics? You didn't win the elections. Your friends from the Israeli private intelligence company, Black Cube, set up the algorithms to alter the vote by using the census of those who never vote for the Bautista brothers on a server whose IP is hosted in Los Angeles, California. They lost the elections and fixed them with algorithms. And so then he posts... Yeah, so like here's the first post. Like Trump posts the Simon Bolivar statue, and then he kicks it all off with that really long post that I post right there. That I posted or that I read there to begin this. Before that, he had made commentaries about the election being stolen. He had posted some evidence that there were irregularities. But I think after that Simon Bolivar statue post that Trump puts up, this is when he just like goes full on and is naming names and is talking about Netanyahu and is talking about the Israeli private intelligence companies, Black Cube, and he's saying that the IP address is in Los Angeles and the Bautista brothers are involved, whoever they are. Yeah, there's a lot of signal here, and I'm just scrolling back a little bit to see if there are. Yeah, so he's like kind of commenting on local politics, some of the local scandals that are happening. Here's some of the things that, he does post this. I'd like a soccer final between the USA and Colombia. This is after Trump, posts and says that the red card was reversed. Okay, so let's see if we can find any more. I want to type in Israel and Netanyahu and see, because the fact that he's accusing Israel of doing this is pretty interesting. And so that Martin Santos guy who says it's irresponsible to question the elections of the same electoral system that elected you, he says, no, Martin, you're wrong. I was selected with E14 forms that were unmodifiable once they were uploaded to the public. I think he means public server, thanks to security algorithms. What they did in these elections was remove all the security algorithms so that they could be modified after being uploaded. These are the videos that he was posting a few weeks ago where he was showing you, he was scrolling on the computer and he had a video, like a screen capture, where he was showing you that these E14 forms were not certified. He's like, these E14 forms, nobody has signed these. These are not certified forms. So all of these forms should be thrown out that don't have a certification on them. The civil unit of digital witnesses, which grew to 70,000 Colombian citizens, many of them high-level experts, managed to detect how the E14 forms were being modified after being uploaded. So the current electoral system is even different from the one the Council of State found in 2014, which in its ruling ordered the software to be changed due to its vulnerability. Today, it's more vulnerable than ever. Its cyber defense is in the hands of software from companies in the U.S. and Israel, controllable by their own laws, by their governments. It's a really, really good point. Let's see. So then on June 21st, which is when the election happens, he says, with the same data from the registry office, he's talking about... so this is what he's posting right after the election on June 21st. With the same data from the registry office, the pre-count result at this moment is 49.3% for Abelardo and 49% for Cepeda. Neither can be proclaimed president. It is the scrutiny that determines who is the president. I obey the judges. Calm among the citizenry, please. Reality gives us a country split down the middle and foreign interference taking away our freedom. A national agreement is imposed if we want to maintain the homeland and peace in the years to come. And then he follows it up with, I warned that the software of the Bautista brothers was vulnerable according to the 2018 Council of State ruling and that it should be replaced with public software. I timely requested an expert audit of the Batista brothers software, and the registrar did not allow it. Well, today we have evidence of a change in IP addresses of several servers of the National Registry. This means that the software was compromised and others wrote data for polling stations and voting posts. The only entity in the world capable of doing that is the state of Israel. I will pass to the judges with precision the changed servers so that they can conduct the expert audit of the electoral software that has not been carried out. To do it in the very process of scrutiny, I request a scrutiny of all polling stations and a new count of all votes with a study of vulnerabilities in the electoral software and the stations that suffered. To the entire population, I request calm and restraint to achieve a thorough and well-done scrutiny that reflects the true precision of the citizenry. Okay. And so then if I go back to his, so he pinned that comment about his post being serious. I've already read that. And then, yeah, he's just kind of like he's like posting the same stuff. He's reposting himself. He's reposting his own posts. Yeah. And then he's talking about how what is coming as fascism, the merger of state and corporate power. The post that I'm looking for is the one where he says, this is not a legitimate government. Let me see. And so, yeah, so here's like Telesur TV. Petro denounces electoral fraud with Israeli algorithms in the June 21st elections. I mean, they say May 31st, but it's June 21st. I think it's a translation issue. He claims to have evidence that a server in the U.S. altered the vote in favor of the far right De La Espriella. Let's see, and then sorry, I was trying to find this post that I had sent to let me see if I can find it real quick. It should be in my saved images. Thought I had it, but I guess I don't. So he has been posting saying, I don't, it's just reminded me of like Trump and Biden, because he's like, I don't recognize this guy as the president. This guy can't be president. He didn't win the election. So I think this might be where everything kicks off. I mean, the fact that he's bringing the United States, the U.S. government into this, he's bringing Israel into this, he's bringing the private sector into this, he's bringing a lot of these organizations, these election integrity organizations into this. This could be where things actually kick off. So I am very, very interested to see how this happens. Here's a poster he makes. It's really long, so I'm not going to read the whole thing, but he's talking about the transition. And he says that as the law indicates, the government handover process continues before the people. Empty chairs will be placed in wait for those who stole the elections to finally understand what it means to govern. The handover is before the people. It is a public delivery of the outgoing government, which ends on August 6th at midnight. Because that was the people's mandate, and I obey the people, no one else. They asked me to do things that would be unconstitutional, like remaining in power, knowing that those coming in did not win the elections. I will not do it because the popular mandate granted to me has an end, and I am a Democrat who respects the Constitution that, as part of the M19, we helped to create. It is the Constitution of peace. The slanders uttered by ex-convicts and relatives of convicts who were among those sent to the handover will be answered judicially. I leave the government with less wealth than I had when I entered it, and with my accounts blocked, unable to make any financial transactions by order of the U.S. government, apparently without President Donald Trump even knowing. I love that. So President Trump didn't even know that this guy's bank accounts were frozen, his U.S. bank accounts at least, or at least the ones on the Western banking system. Despite the difficulties, it serves me to demonstrate my honesty. The incoming one cannot do the same because he cannot show that he recently set up companies in Florida with his relatives to pocket several dollars with the money that foreigners handed over to him for his campaign. I recognize that real people who voted for Abelardo, and I respect them. On July 20th, I will give my last public speech as president of Colombia in Southwest Bogota to bid farewell to the armed forces, which I strengthened and which achieved the world record of one combat every 20 hours and became the largest cocaine seizures in the world. They will be led by someone I removed from the army for accusations of charging money from the per diems and incomes earned by the subordinates. Let's see. I reduced, like no other government, the state's violence against civilian population in conflict because I am a Democrat and respect human rights. Yeah, I'm just trying to like skip through some of this. The response is active resistance, and when the people decide civil disobedience, what is coming is authoritarianism bordering on totalitarianism, thanks to the power Abelardo has so far secured in the courts and in Congress. What is coming is fascism, and fascism is not negotiated with, it is defeated. We are not inventing when we say that Abelardo's government was elected from abroad with non-existent votes and the percentage adjusted automatically by algorithms made by private Israeli companies with the endorsement of their genocidal government and processed by the company that I myself publicly denounced, which the justice system itself, in a full ruling by the Council of State, had already ordered removed since 2018. Today, we explained to the bloc elected by the people the arsenal of evidence obtained that will present the justice in a demand for the nullity of the elections. As is our duty, humanity will know the facts because what happened in Colombia has already happened in other countries, even European ones, and it will continue to happen. We are not only facing the imminence of fascism in Colombia, but perhaps the greatest attack on world democracy since the time of Hitler. I mean, dude, this guy is a legend. Gustavo Petro, based as hell. Love that guy. He immediately catapults to the top of the power rankings when it comes to world leaders because of this. All right, let's hit some rants and let y'all get out of here. HL421, $5 just because, and always, as always, thanks for your analysis, Ghost. Well, thank you for the support. Thank you for the rant. Appreciate you. Harold Patriot, $5. Is your last name spelled McCormick? Just asking because there was a lovely lady at GART from Hawaii running for state house by the name of Daleen McCormick. That is the correct spelling for my last name. But I'm not related to her. I do remember she got up and spoke, and she had a lot to share and great things to say. So I would encourage people to go look her up, Daleen McCormick, Dalene. She was going around, if I recall correctly, she was going around passing out like information and saying, here's like, third party information, not information she had created, but she was basically saying her argument was the more information you consume, the better, like the more informed we all will be. And I definitely endorse that. So I think it's good to just take in more information and learn as much as you can about people in the world and then kind of separate the facts from the fiction. Jana Ellen, I hope I'm saying that right. Hey, Gordon, thank you for all your hard work on keeping us informed of all things Middle East. Also, what was the music you played in the background going in and coming back from the break? That was custom original music, AI-generated music that Green Star's brother helped me develop. He did it for me. I gave him some input and some prompts, and he came up with a couple of different songs. So we'll probably be using that for the time being. I know that there's some subscription that we're signed up for where you can actually access copyrighted music and use it. But I think for now, we'll just use this custom music. I like it. And then let's check out the Badlands Boost. If you're listening to this on replay, you can go to Badlands media.tv/boost, or just go to balancemedia.tv and click on the boost section at the top. And we might be completely called up, and if we are, that is absolutely fine. June 10th. So that is Eileen. Yep, I think we've covered that. Yep. So we are caught up. But if you want to leave a rant after hours, if you're not watching this live, you can certainly go do that. Badlandsmedia.tv, and then click on the boost section, and there's a drop-down menu. We definitely appreciate everybody's support. Thank y'all for being here. Thank y'all for hitting the thumbs up, sharing the show, and we will see you on Friday. So until then, y'all have a fantastic, fantastic week.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.